Mrs. Williams, Mrs. Malahoo Fort, Dr. Tufton, Mr. McKenzie, Mr. Chuck, Mr. Vaz, Mr. Warmington, Mr. Hutchinson, Mr. Charles, Mr. Green, Mr. Terry Long, Miss Smith, Mr. Main, Dr. Dunn, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Mr. Montague, Mr. Main, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Davis, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brownberg, Dr. Charles, Mr. Chin, Mr. Clark, Mr. Cousins, Ms. Crawford, Ms. Daly, Ms. Davis, Mr. Golding, Mr. Graham, Dr. Guy, Ms. Hamilton, Ms. Hannah, Mr. Henry Kitts, Mr. Henry, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Lawrence, Ms. Lee, Mr. Miller, Ms. Morrison, Ms. Nita, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Sibbles, Mr. Slowly, Mr. Slowly, Mrs. Vaz, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Williams, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Witter, Mr. Wright. Dr. Dawn.
Members, just before we get into the agenda, AG, we missed you and welcome you back and want to extend our condolences to you on the passing of your mom. And we ask for God's grace and peace for you at this time. We know it is difficult and we are with you. Statements by ministers.
Madam Speaker, I'm grateful to you for raising the matter of the passing of the mother of our Attorney General, and to ask that I be permitted to make a short comment on the passing of Miss Euphemia Dunn Van Horn, who actually was predeceased by her former husband, Alexander Malahoo, who I happen to know very well from our own experience as a child. We grew up in the same community of Paul Island, and Miss P, as we affectionately called her, was one of the fine mothers and fine community leaders of Paul Island. And the many things that she has done in her time, we still say today that her biggest job and most successful of all was motherhood, because she produced 6 children, one of whom is today celebrated as one of the fine minds in our legal world, indeed, not just in Jamaica, but all over the world, as Marlene Malahoo Fort's name rings with distinction anywhere in the Commonwealth jurisprudence in recent times. She has represented and presented Jamaica's position at the highest court in the world with great distinction. And I wanted to, on behalf of the Parliament, express to her deep condolences on the passing of her mother, and to say to her that our prayers continue to be with her as she continues to carry the heavy duties of representation in the constituency of West Central St. James, while at the same time carrying through the onerous and difficult task of being Attorney General of Jamaica for the second consecutive term. May Ms. P's soul rest in peace and light perpetual shine on her. Madam Speaker, I would crave also that an appropriate note be sent to the Attorney General and member for West Central St. James indicating the sentiments of this Honorable House. May it please you, Madam Speaker. The matter of statements by ministers is the next item on our agenda, and I would indicate that there are two statements to be made today, one by the Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sports, among other things, the Whip of the Parliament and Deputy House Leader, the Honourable Olivia Babsy-Grange, and the other by the Minister of Health and Wellness, the Honourable Dr. Christopher Tufton. So, Madam Speaker, may I ask you to invite the Minister of Gender Affairs to make her statement.
Mr. Green.
Madam Speaker, just before the Minister comes to speak, I'd just like to associate the opposition with remarks by yourself and the Leader of Government Business with respect to our colleague, the Attorney General, passing of her mother.
Sorry, Madam Speaker, I'll begin again. Ananda Dean, 11-year-old student, abducted and killed in 2008. Kenise Jackson, 20 years old, accounting clerk of Portmore, St. Catherine, only daughter of her mother, body found in bushes in 2021. Jasmine Dean, visually impaired, UWI student, missing since February 2020. Sharon Cole, 61 years old, of McDonald District, Crooked River, murdered on February 15. Imani Green, 8 years old, British girl from Balham, South London, killed in Duncan's, Trelawney on January 2013. Iselin McFarlane, mother, and Michelle McFarlane and Christina McFarlane, daughters, killed in November 2020. Colleen Walker, 53 years old, vice principal of Excelsior High School, killed in August 2020. Madam Speaker, many others not named today. It is on a somber note and with pain in my heart that I stand to give voice to the now suppressed voices of our sisters who have been brutally killed in the epidemic of domestic violence in our country. Killed because some man felt he had the right to decide whom she should love or that she should continue in an abusive relationship regardless. Killed because she did not have the physical strength to fight back. As intimidated and threatened, she kept silence until the moment of her death. Madam Speaker, we say today a special prayer for the soul and for the family of those who have been killed, and a special prayer for Kenise Jackson. In this case, we are reeling from what has happened to her. And we know that the police has taken into custody a person of interest, and we support the national call for justice. I call out the names of victims earlier. I speak each name in this honorable house so that we can all collectively mourn with their families the loss of their loved ones, another mother, a wife, a partner, a sister, a daughter, a friend, a co-worker, all Jamaican women and girls who were born with a dream, their lives snuffed out in an untimely fashion. We comfort, Madam Speaker, their families today as they mourn the empty space at the dining table, their noted absence at the family gathering, particularly at this time at Easter. The spirits of these persons, restless and weary, hover in this place as we remember them as part of our Jamaican family who should not have lost their lives in this fashion. I hope I speak for them, Madam Speaker, as their spirits beckon to us, not for revenge, but for justice, and ultimately for an end to these senseless acts of violence and hostility against our women and girls. In their silence, I speak now to the men of this country, those in this house, and in the wider society, as we seek solutions to these baseless acts of violence against our women and our girls. How can we, Madam Speaker, as a society remain unmoved by these horrible deaths of our women and girls? To what extent does the continuation of this hostility speak to collective failure on our part in this House and on the part of the whole society, Madam Speaker? If we all cannot protect our women and girls, our most vulnerable, from such horrible acts of violence, how do we even see ourselves as a civilized society? At what point do we say enough is enough? Madam Speaker, I want to use this opportunity to call on every organization in our country to get involved in activities to stem the bloodletting against our women and our girls in our communities. I want to ask our faith-based leadership to use their pulpit and their respected status to sustain a dialogue within communities in the face of this violence against our women and girls. I ask that they engage our men in dialogue as part of our collective effort to deal with these crimes. I beg to see influential men in this society engaging weaker-minded men in conversation so that we can create communities of harmony and peace where our women and girls can live free from fear for their lives. Faith-based institutions are disproportionately supported by our women. Women are at the forefront of church attendance, church ministry, and church fellowship. For their faith, trust, and commitment, today those who have lost their lives beckon to faith-based leaders and congregations to get involved, to be more vigilant, to speak out in situations of domestic conflict. They are in every single community in this country. It is no longer enough to declare it is not our business, as our sisters cry in horrible silence in death. We must be our sisters' keepers. We must feel a commitment to protect our women and girls. We must be sisters for sisters. We must be brothers for sisters. And we must be brothers and sisters for each other. And I'm making a special appeal to the man them on the corner. Stop beat your woman and stop threatening them. We need to get on the ground and we need to go into every single community across this country and do something about this horrible situation of violence against our women and girls. In some cases, our men who do not attend these faith-based institutions often decide to stay home expecting wives to return home to prepare dinner. And when church goes on longer than usual and they return home late, they are often met with hostility and violence. Cook your dinner yourself if you have to, but leave our women alone. This cannot be allowed to continue, and those who know must speak out before it is too late. Our women must no longer be told to suffer in violence, in silence, or to expect their reward will come after they die. Madam Speaker, sadly, some of our men view compassion as a sign of weakness and unmanliness. This speaks to another factor that impacts women and girls negatively, often leading to violence. I refer to this as a cultural definition of maleness. Unfortunately, Madam Speaker, many of our boys and men develop a toxic masculinity that often defines itself in violence and aggression against women and girls. Young men who are courteous and gentle with women are often harassed and vilified in favor of those who would push aggression in defining their maleness. To this end, I want to appeal to members of the music and entertainment fraternity and media whose voices are keenly respected by our boys and young men to join us in this campaign to rid our country of the scourge of violence against our women and our girls. It used to be that one action that would almost always cause aggressive response in men would be to insult or vilify their mothers, their daughters, or their wives. Men used to get very upset if anybody tell them about their mother. So to the men of Jamaica, I ask, when did this change to the point that so many of our women are now suffering from violence at the hands of our men? Today, I call for collective action across the country. We must find solutions to this scourge among us. It must be all hands on deck. It is an issue of national security and justice, and we must commend and support the actions of our law enforcement in this matter. There is evidence that they are responding more rapidly and purposefully, and we encourage them to not relent. We see that they are starting to respond to calls regarding missing women without waiting for the usual 24 hours to pass. Waiting on 24 hours is no longer relevant and is no longer considered. We also encourage them to continue to step in whenever there is report of domestic conflict that demands attention or intervention. Don't say a man or woman business. Prevention must also be the preferred approach. To support law enforcement, my ministry through the Bureau of Gender Affairs will continue our consultation with citizens so that they can better recognize the telltale signs of broken relationships and domestic conflict before they end in death for a woman. Madam Speaker, on another note, there are those who are promoting the need for women to defend themselves by various means within the law. The idea that women should defend their lives by various means is gaining currency. Some have suggested that women arm themselves with pepper spray and other such instruments of defense. However, Madam Speaker, we are aware that there would need to be greater dialogue with the Ministry of Justice in relation to these matters. Suffice it to say that our women must now take very seriously their domestic circumstances and be open to counseling, finding solutions before things escalate. Seek assistance when you think a relationship is going bad. In this regard, Madam Speaker, my ministry, the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, and its relevant division, which is the Bureau of Gender Affairs, will continue our dialogue with the Ministry of National Security, the Ministry of Justice, and other relevant agencies and civil society to find urgent solutions to this crisis. We're also in discussion with the Social Development Commission because they are into community action and development. They have the network across the island. And I must commend the Minister of Local Government and Community Development for having this very effective network in every single community across this island. And we're going to work with them to see how we can make our intervention stronger. Additionally, at the Bureau, we will continue to promote male mentorship programs in schools so that boys may develop new and more positive approaches in their relationship with girls and women. Our 24-hour helpline is always open. Speak now before another woman or girl dies.
The Minister's time for speaking has expired.
5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the Minister's time, be extended by 5 minutes to allow her to complete the presentation.
The question is that the Minister's time be extended to allow her to complete her presentation. Those in favor? Those against?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We will enhance actions which we are ramping up to tackle this issue. In this regard, I bring to you information on some specific interventions we're making at the Bureau. The Refocus Perpetrators Program is one such, and this aims to provide alternative conflict resolution and rehabilitation techniques as options for men involved in intimate partner violence. This program starts this April. Another program, Know Your Rights information sessions. The idea here is to increase knowledge and awareness within the community on the Sexual Harassment Prevention Act and Domestic Violence Act. Another program, Stand Up, Talk Up information sessions. This aims to sensitize men and women to the issues surrounding intimate partner violence, positive masculinity, sexual harassment at the workplace, and child abuse. Another program we have is increased sensitization on the Male Crisis Helpline. Many persons still see the Bureau as the Bureau of Women's Affairs, and so many of our men are not aware of this helpline. The Bureau will be taking to the streets and communities and hope to get help from the SDC to put this information by way of flyers in barbershops, bars, churches, etc., where men usually converged. Madam Speaker, as you know, many of our adolescent mothers also suffer from gender-based violence and sexual abuse. They are victims, and some of them have been a part of the program at the Women's Center of Jamaica Foundation. We have had 11-year-olds pregnant because of sexual abuse. The Bureau continues its program to rehabilitate these mothers and reposition them for success. And today, I wish to commend the Bank of Nova Scotia that has donated $2 million to the Women's Center of Jamaica Foundation to provide tablets to our adolescent mothers to enhance the academic component of the program. Academic, and I think we should applaud them. Academic reinforcement is a positive enhancer of hope for these are women who are prone to violence and abuse by virtue of being marginalized in the workforce and wider community. Additionally, my ministry is working to strengthen the staffing and provisions of the Bureau so that they can more readily and successfully intervene in the affairs that women find themselves in. This includes forecasting and evaluating the corrosive circumstances that they find themselves in. We will be creating a position of legal counsel at the Bureau, where we will be able to provide legal advice in relation to domestic violence and to collaborate with law enforcement in the enforcement of the Domestic Violence Act and follow up on victims. The matter is urgent, Madam Speaker. And so I call upon all members of this honorable House to engage with us as we seek to eliminate this scourge within our society. There can be no comfort as long as our women and girls continue to face hostility, aggression, and violent death. Our women are the principal caregivers, as you all know. To harm or destroy them will impact the very fabric of our society. No one among us should feel comfortable while violence is meted out to our women and girls every day. Indeed, all of us should feel responsible for their well-being. Ultimately, the quality of our society will be measured by the way in which we treat the most vulnerable among us, our women and our girls. I call for national action for the elimination of violence against our women and girls, action to counter toxic masculinity that lines up in offense against our women, action to ensure that there is harmony and peaceful cohabitation within our communities based in respect for the right to life and freedom to be of all citizens, particularly our women. Madam Speaker, I wish you, as I close, to give an update on Jodianne, that homeless lady who was on the street with her son that was brought to our attention. She is no longer homeless. She has received a compassionate grant. She has been assisted with expenses for her transportation. She has been assisted with accommodation, and she is now employed. And so, Madam Speaker, those are my, and I can't say a few words, but those are my comments as I express how passionately and how strongly I feel about the violence that's taking place in our society at this time against our women and our girls. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
Hold a minute. I ask you to hold on till the opposition.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I normally try to keep my mask on because I believe we need to talk with our mask on, but I want to make sure that my voice is heard clearly. I rise, Madam Speaker, with a very heavy heart, and it gives me absolutely no pleasure to contribute to the conversation that we are having here in Parliament. In fact, as I stand to speak, I feel the weight of the tears, of the sorrow that has been permeating our country and around the conversations that we have been having. 126 women are killed in this kind of way for the last couple of years, year on year. 2 for every week in each year. And the question I think we have to ask ourselves is, what does that say of us as a society, of us as parliamentarians, lawmakers, policymakers, of us as parents, as us in our communities, and what is our contribution to solving that problem, and to calling it out, and to standing up for those who perhaps are afraid at the time or unable to exercise agency and to exercise their own voice. Minister, I am pleased by some of the achievements that you have mentioned in your presentation, and in particular around Jordan, because that is a case as well that we have been talking about for a little while, and that has rested heavily on our collective consciousness. Many Jamaicans have been saying in the last couple of days, will this be another 9-day wonder? Will we just be outraged now, and then what? And I believe that it falls to us to make sure it goes beyond that. So in doing that, I also want to thank the Jamaica Constabulary Force in terms of the swift action that they have been taking and where we are now in terms of the case itself. And I want to extend condolences to the family. We mourn with them today. We feel the sorrow. We too, many of us, are either daughters or mothers or fathers or sisters or brothers to women. So we understand what this must be doing to the family. Minister, I know the call you made, and I want to echo a call to action to our women as well as our men. Often we call on our women because we think they understand what is happening and they might be the best allies we can find. But I believe that in doing that, we have to be very clear that one hand can't clap. In fact, I believe that one of the things that really needs probably a little bit greater attention, Minister, is the role of our men in the lives of our children and in the lives of our family. So I want to ask everybody, wherever you are, as long as you can encourage a father to remain in the life of a child, do it. As long as you can encourage good men to be in the lives of children who are not even their own, but to stand in that breach, do it. Because I believe it is part of what is missing. I'm not victim blaming, but as a mother, conscious of the stats around single parentness in Jamaica and the number of our families that are headed by women, I feel an extra burden. I feel an extra burden because I say, as mothers to these boys, where did we go wrong? And I think we have to ask ourselves that too. And
the member's time for speaking has expired.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the member's time be extended to allow her to complete her presentation.
thank you very much. And thank you.
As this is an important issue,
I will put it in.
we put an additional 5 minutes? We'll allow the member adequate time to complete her presentation. Those in favor? Those opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and pardon my haste to complete. And so I'm also making a call for us to ensure that we make the kind of partnership with our academic institutions so that when the studies are done and we encourage them to study these phenomena, that they can actually make recommendations to us. And I'd love for us to find a way to get some of those recommendations to come before us in the Parliament so that they can also help to guide us in terms of some of the policies and the laws we need to make around what are some of the issues that are driving the behavior that we are seeing. I want to make a call as well. I know the minister is well aware. I know we are both addendum in terms of the fact that this is not just a national security matter. It is also an educational matter. It is a health matter. It is a finance matter. And so all of these ministries I'd love to see come together and ensure that the programs that are there are targeting our women, that we carve it out for our women. We carve it out so that we can improve their financial position, so that we can improve their agency and the empowerment of our women. We carve it out so we can improve and strengthen the partnership between men and women as we build the society. We come together so we can create spaces, safe spaces, for those who are abused, for those who are feeling helpless, for those who know that what they're doing is not right, but they don't know what else to do. And Minister, I know and I have seen what you have been doing in terms of the special helpline that has been created for men, and we want to encourage more men to use that, and we want to encourage individuals to encourage men to do that as well. Issues around parenting, I don't think we can escape that. I believe that we have to get back to the drawing board about what's happening in the home, because that's really where it has to start. And I think that all of us have to be committed to make sure that we start there in the home, in our communities, and see what's happening there, talk about what's happening there, look at what is happening there, and provide the kind of support. I speak passionately about that because it was just today that I got a call from a gentleman who was telling me just how concerned he is about a particular community. The number of boys that had already dropped out of school, the amount of girls that are already on the road to teenage pregnancy, just on the road with no parental support, no parental supervision. We have to do something about that. And then finally, I want to call on all institutions that are led primarily by men. There are so many of them in the country. I want to make a special call to our men that lead these institutions to step up and to step out and make sure they lead the way. I want to ask them to ensure that they help the women in those organizations to feel free, to feel safe enough to step up and to talk up and to deal with the issues that they see. Minister, you spoke about the mace, and I want to end there, because I believe, although we understand that there's work to be done, I believe that we need to be very clear and very loud in saying we want our women to have tools to protect themselves. And whatever we need to do to ensure that they are able to do that, that it is done in the speediest possible way. And while they're waiting on us to do that, Google online how to make your own mace so you can protect yourself. Those are my few words.
Madam Speaker, I'm of the view that the public wants to hear more than impassioned speeches from us in this House today. Madam Speaker, the public has heard over time regarding horrific incidents, how much we have been shaken to the core, how heartfelt it has been, how hurt we are, how much we have empathized with the family. Today, the Jamaican public is saying to us, do something, do something more. We want to feel the presence of Parliament in our lives. And Honourable Minister Grange, we thank you so much for your presentation and indeed the efforts that you have been making to date. Madam Speaker, I rise to call for the amendment to Section 42D of the Criminal Justice Act number 29, 2015, the relevant section 42D. Madam Speaker, it says, where the defendant indicates to the court on the first relevant date that he wishes to plead guilty to the offence, the sentence may be reduced by up to 50%. Where the defendant indicates to the court on the first relevant date that he wishes, but before the trial commences, that he wishes to plead guilty to the offence, the sentence may be reduced by up to 35%. Madam Speaker, even if there is a reduction in the sentence of pleading guilty, the amount given must be reflective of the nature and severity of the offence, Madam Speaker. The law needs to serve as a deterrent. It cannot be that you murder someone, you kill someone, and it's an automatic 50% of the sentence because of a guilty plea. Madam Speaker, I am no legal luminary, but I'm aware that there is plea bargaining legislation that exists that can take into consideration subsequent to the sentencing. But what the Jamaican people, what our people are calling for, and they are within their right, they are calling for the protection of women, of girls, right across. Madam Speaker, we need, what the Jamaican people are saying, we need justice. The Jamaicans, they are looking forward to us, government and opposition, to pass good legislation, strong legislation. Madam Speaker, this is about the victim. This is about the victim's family. This is about Jamaica. This is about the people and this government. We will always be right on the side of the people. Madam Speaker, we in this House, we must show that we understand, we empathize, and we care by passing strong legislation. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker.
Before the Leader of the Opposition, then the member from St. Catherine, the Minister of Justice, I just want to note that it is unusual for us to have statements at this time from everybody, but because of the gravity of the situation, because of the absolute depravity of what has taken place, I am using my position as a speaker to allow members of this House to speak on the matter. Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to join in the expressions of sympathy and condolence to the family of the most recent female victim of a heinous murder, Canice Jackson, which has shocked the conscience of the nation yet again. Madam Speaker, in terms of action, I think one thing that we should really look at quickly, and which has been adverted to by my colleague, the Member of Parliament for South West St. Andrew, is the issue of enabling women, if they so choose, to carry pepper spray or mace for their personal protection. The law was passed in 2001, the Offensive Weapons Prohibition Act. And in 2001, when that legislation was passed, it specifically exempted and excluded pepper spray and mace from being defined or included in the definition of an offensive weapon. And the Parliament at that time clearly anticipated that women would be allowed to carry pepper spray or mace for their personal protection. To the extent that it was used in any other way, that would not be lawful. But if it was used in self-defense to protect themselves, it would be not an offensive weapon, it would be lawful. However, since then, in 2010, I think it was, an order was made under the Customs Act prohibiting the importation of those items into the country. And in our case that went before the Supreme Court, where that was challenged, the prohibition on importation was challenged. That challenge did not succeed. And in the course of the discussion by the judge, in her judgment, she made the point that in her view, the 2001 Act of which I spoke, which specifically excluded and exempted pepper spray and mace from being treated as an offensive weapon once it's being carried for personal protection, had impliedly repealed any inconsistent provision that maybe felt to have existed in the Firearms Act, which is a 1967 statute. There's no reference to pepper spray or mace in the Firearms Act, but some of the definitions in the Act are quite broad, and there was an argument that they would have encompassed pepper spray or mace. The judge said that, in her view, to the more recent provision, the more specific provision of 2001, which specifically addressed pepper spray and mace, had impliedly repealed those earlier provisions, but she made the point that that issue was not directly before her in the case, so what she was saying was what lawyers call obiter dicta, meaning it wasn't an essential component of the decision she was making. Here now, in 2021, women are feeling unsafe, the resources of the state are stretched, and they're calling for action. And I would urge the government to look at that particular issue again, look at what was attempted in 2001, and if necessary, amend the Firearms Act, a simple amendment to exclude from the purview of the Firearms Act pepper spray or mace carried for personal protection, and facilitate a regime that would allow its importation, distribution, sale in an appropriately controlled way. I don't think the licensing of these things through the firearm licensing authority is a viable approach. That would be expensive and cumbersome, but I do believe that there ought to be some assurance that the persons accessing it are of sound mind and that the persons selling it are reputable and so on. But those are policy issues to be looked at, but ideally looked at quickly in tandem with an amendment to make it clear that those items, when carried for personal protection and self-defense, are lawful. I note the suggestions made by the member on the other side to do with the discount on sentencing. Just to say on that issue, I think a review of those provisions would be timely. They are discretionary in the sense that the court is not obliged to give a discount at all, or indeed a discount of 50%, which is only applicable if the guilty plea is put forward at the very earliest date in the process. And the purpose of those amendments, when they were passed into law, was to address some of the backlog issues in the courts, where we had a large volume of criminal cases that were taking a very long time to get to trial. And this was an inducement for those who didn't have a valid defense to come forward early, and their cases could be disposed of. And the court was empowered to give them a discount, though the discount is ultimately at the discretion of the court. Now, it has had a beneficial effect in the sense that many cases have been disposed of via that route very quickly. Up to this week, in the newspapers, there was an article about alleged gang member who had been held with a firearm in December, and in March, a mere 3 months later, that person had been sentenced to imprisonment for possession of that firearm. And that was through that same mechanism. So I'm saying, let us review it. If it is felt to be not achieving its objective, or if it is felt that the judges are too lenient in their application of it, then we can look at adjusting it or getting rid of it altogether. But I don't think just an impassioned plea, which mischaracterizes the way it works, is particularly helpful. I think we need to actually see the way it in fact works, what the legal provisions provide for, and how they are applied in practice by the courts, and decide whether they have any continuing relevance or they ought to be adjusted. I'm very much in favor of that review, Minister. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member, just before you do, may I ask the member who has had his hand up, St. Catherine Southeastern, and then afterwards, you member, can you switch your mic? We're not hearing you clearly.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to support the strategies made by Minister from Central St. Catherine on the issue that we have at hand. I also echo the sentiments made by the member from Northeast St. Catherine about the citizens of Jamaica needing justice. Madam Speaker, Canice Jackson was a citizen of Southeast St. Catherine. The entire constituency is in mourning. I had the privilege of meeting with her mom along with Honorable Prime Minister, and the entire constituency is at grief. You see, Madam Speaker, young Jackson had a bright future. She was actually working to save to start tertiary education this September. Madam Speaker, Southeast St. Catherine citizens need justice, and they need justice now. Ms. Williams needs justice for her daughter. We, as legislators, we must come together and to amend our act to ensure that stricter measures be given to the perpetrator that is found guilty of this crime. Madam Speaker, I'm of the belief as well that we need to retool, re-socialize our boys in the society. As men, we need to be mentors to a lot of them. We need to socialize them in the way we teach them how to treat women, how to have respect for women. And Madam Speaker, I'm committed to that task, and as a legislator, I'll do everything in my powers to ensure that justice is served for Canice Jackson and others that went before her. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will be brief. First, let me support those who have spoken in support of any measure to protect our women. I just want to deal with two matters, Madam Speaker. The matter mentioned by the member from Northeast St. Catherine and also the leader of the opposition. amendment to the Criminal Justice Administration Act in 2015, carried by the then Minister of Justice, was fully supported by me, because the idea was that it would reduce the backlog and also urge persons to plead guilty. But when, Madam Speaker, in 2016, I was putting in place the plea negotiations and agreements act, I thought that what appeared as seemed to be happening by the judges, to use it as an almost automatic reduction, that it would be inappropriate, and I really wanted to repeal that Section 42D that dealt with it. And I must tell you, I argued with my technical team that we must repeal it and let the plea negotiation be the basis on which we impose the sentence. But because it was only passed in 2015, and this is 2016, my technical team literally said, allow it to see how it works. But the truth of the matter, Madam Speaker, is that the judges blame us in Parliament in that their hands are tied, in that once the person pleads guilty on the first opportunity, they simply say 50% reduction. If it is not the first opportunity, 35%. And if it is during the trial, 25%. Madam Speaker, the way when I reflect and see how it has been happening, it is not appropriate in every situation. And I believe that there are really egregious cases where the judge's discretion should say, I am not using this amendment. But one gets the impression that they feel almost bound by these amendments for one reason or another. And I have heard judges say it is based on the law. Well, the truth of the matter, Madam Speaker, very shortly, I will be tabling in the House the right of appeal for the prosecution, of which one basis is to appeal sentence. And I think at that time, I feel we need to determine whether this amendment should be removed. Because if the amendment is not removed, to give a right of appeal to the prosecution based on sentence, that right would almost be nugatory, in the sense that the Court of Appeal might say the judge followed the law, and therefore that right of appeal would not be appropriate. So in truth, having reflected on it, I can say, and I'm prepared to have further discussion, that we must amend that section, remove that amendment, and allow the plea negotiation to be the basis of sentencing, because in the plea negotiation and Agreements Act, it allows not only the defense to appeal for mitigation, but also for the prosecution to make representation in terms of what would be an appropriate sentence, and the prosecution in doing so would then also take into consideration the feelings of the victim or the families of the victim in appropriate cases. Because, to be frank, Madam Speaker, sentencing is a difficult subject for a judge. They tell you that all the time. And it's clear that sentencing is a major criticism. And the public is really very strong that sentencing are too lenient. But you know, Madam Speaker, when you look at the cases, the judges tell you that what they've done is in accordance with the law. So to give you an example, Madam Speaker, there was a sentence for very gross killing, where the sentence was 6 years. And the judge, when you look at it, said she started out at 18 years for manslaughter, which is an appropriate sentence for manslaughter, 18 years. But then she said she gave 50% reduction, which took it to 9 years. But the man was in custody for 3 years. And the Privy Council says that if you're in remand for a period of time, that must be taken off in the sentence to impose. So it was reduced from 9 years to 6 years. And the complaint in the press, and quite rightly, was that the man may only serve 4 years because he may get 2 years off if he behaves himself in prison. So, Madam Speaker, this is a matter which we will come back to Parliament to examine further the sentencing policy, how we deal with the amendment, how we deal with the right of appeal, including the right to appeal sentence. But on a final note, and second point, Madam Speaker, with respect...
This has to be your final note,
yes,
because of your time.
With respect to the pepper spray, we have to be careful, Leader of the Opposition, that we balance, as I said before, opportunity and risk. Opportunity for women to be able to get it and use it. But if we don't supervise and control it properly, criminals could get it, and they can use it to disable unsuspecting victims. So we have to be careful and balance it properly. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Our next speaker is from St. Catherine, Easton, and then St. Catherine, Easton. Yes.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Much has been said, but I want to join my voice in solidarity to the victims. I mean, you know, I heard the member on the government side said that we come every time that something happens and we make announcements, and it is time really for action. Madam Speaker, while I am in total agreement with tougher penalties for these, I don't even know how to describe them, that is creating and carrying out these brutal acts. But Madam Speaker, I strongly believe that as a parliament, as a nation, we are not doing some things right. It might sound funny, and I probably would not get the opportunity to express myself the way I would want to express today. But just to state that I would prefer to speak to the preventative measures, not in terms of long sentences or even execution, but to look at education, starting from in primary school. Madam Speaker, values and attitude in this country has almost eroded totally. And every time that something happens, we come and we look at the individual or the particular matter. What I would really love to see is for us to look at ways and means from the opposition and from the government side to seriously start looking at some of these root causes, because there must be a root cause. And even if you put everyone that you can catch and find guilty in prison, if there is a root cause and there is tendencies, it will continue to happen. And therefore, I strongly believe, Madam Speaker, that we really need to look at how we socialized, how we are allowing our boys to socialize, and to look at family life. And in doing so, I personally believe that there are some homes that cannot, not that they don't want to, but they cannot manage to be able to instill those values, and it has to start in the school. I am in solidarity with the mothers, with the fathers, with the family who have really fallen victim to this kind of, you know, it's so embarrassing to be talking about killing of women and children in a country that we should be, we say it's a happy country, and we just keep on doing this. This is almost like a pandemic. It is almost like the same COVID. You said it, Prime Minister. It is true. Equally, we will have to look at how we deal with both. And I'm saying, Madam Speaker, I am willing. I am not talking about long sentences and then we still have a root cause. I want to know, why is it that these men believe that they can get up and do these heinous things and believe it is okay? Something is wrong. And I believe, Madam Speaker, together we can make a difference in what is happening now. Thank you very much.
The member from Central Manchester.
Madam Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to rise in this honorable house to speak against violence against us, women, and our children. The callous killing of Kanice has tugged at our hearts and ignited a national outrage, and rightly so. But, Madam Speaker, we have been here before. In fact, Madam Speaker, we have been here too many times before. We must now ask ourselves, and by we, I refer to all Jamaicans, we must ask ourselves, how did we get here, and how much longer do we expect to stay here? Madam Speaker, I have a few answers to the questions. There has been a breakdown in family values. The village no longer raises the child. We have developed blatant disregard for authority and the rule of law. We have socialized our men into thinking that if they express their feelings, speak about their hurts, they are sissies. And, Madam Speaker, there is one too many group of women who believe that if they aren't beaten by a man, they are not loved. And finally, Madam Speaker, there are men who think that women are their properties. We are not properties. Madam Speaker, we need a radical shift in our thinking and socialization. We must also realize that we have now run out of time. The time for action is now. We cannot continue to be selectively outraged and allow incidents as these to be added to our self-created book of 9 Days Wonder. Madam Speaker, I wish to give notice that I am prepared in my capacity as a lawmaker to support more aggressive measures to protect our women, children, and people of this country. As a lawmaker, I cannot do it alone. As the government, we cannot do it alone. So, Madam Speaker, permit me to make a few calls. One, for the opposition to join the government in a united fight against crime and criminality. Two, for the civil society and the church to be more deliberate and consistent in their fight against crime. For communities to send a strong signal to its criminal elements that they will no longer be protected. For families to quit protecting their fathers, brothers, husbands, cousins, nephews, and children who are known perpetrators of violence. Madam Speaker, all hands are required on deck. And I know that as Jamaicans, whenever we make up our minds to do something, we do it well. So let us join hands and destroy this monster called crime. Madam Speaker, on behalf of the people of Manchester Central, I thank you.
The Honourable Minister of Education, member from St. Andrew Eastern.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity to speak. On Friday, March 26, we heard the news of Kanice that all of us as Jamaicans were fearing. Madam Speaker, I felt it as a mother. And I cannot imagine what my state of mind would be were I to receive that news about my daughter. Madam Speaker, violence against women is a sin. Violence against women is a problem for the peace of all of us. Violence against women is a problem for development for Jamaica. I want Kanice's mother to know that we stand with her in this very dark moment in her life, and that the death of her daughter will not be forgotten. Our young boys in our schools must begin to learn new norms, that violence against girls and women is not acceptable, that language that demeans girls and women is shameful, and we must begin to introduce into our curriculum what it means to be a good Jamaican, a good human being. We want our boys to know that calling our girls in demeaning ways, calling our girls gals, we have to do away with language such as that. Madam Speaker, we have a chance to reset. We can do more than mourn. Yes, we have to, and we mourn with the family. But we can do more than mourn. We must change what we teach our boys so that when they become men, violence against women will be no more. My deepest, sincerest condolences to the family. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Permit me firstly to express my sincere thank you to yourself, the Leader of Government Business and the Leader of Opposition Business, for your very kind words. These are challenging times, and I thought long and hard about whether I should get up to speak. But this matter, addressed firstly by the Honourable Minister Grange, is one that cuts deep, Madam Speaker. In the wake of another heinous crime, as the Honourable Minister has indicated, the cries for justice. And I take no pleasure in saying that violence is deeply embedded in the psyche of the Jamaican culture. It is as if it is almost part of our cultural DNA. Madam Speaker, we regale acts of violence. Even in ordinary conversation, people are known to say how they're going to murder them. It is in our music. You know, even when we joke and we jest with each other, may I go kill you, may we kick you over, may I go box you down. And while some people may not act on it, the words seep deep inside of many others who act it out and act them out. And so, Madam Speaker, as Minister Grange has rightly said, the people of Jamaica are looking to the leaders who sit in this honourable House for solutions. And we have the head of government in the House, and we have the lawmakers. We have the entire executive in the House, almost, or between the two houses. where our Constitution says that the policies that are made are collectively responsible, they're held collectively responsible to the Parliament. And we, the parliamentarians, Madam Speaker, are constitutionally under duty to pass laws for peace, order, and good government. And I say this to provide the context in which I believe the solutions that are being looked at may come. Madam Speaker, there is no easy answer. The problems that are highlighting themselves in the various brutal acts of criminality didn't start overnight, and they are not going to go away overnight. But as a country, we have to be prepared for the long haul, because we are so caught up with instant gratification that sometimes even in the exercise of leadership, we forget that there is process and event, and that things don't happen overnight. And we can't afford to lose hope, become impatient. We have to stick it out. And this, Madam Speaker, leads me to say, on the policy side, since the issue of the Criminal Justice Administration Act was mentioned, and in particular the guilty plea, part of the cry for solution in the society is for heavier sentencing. When I sat in the other house, I pointed out that it doesn't matter how heavy the sentences are. A sentence only comes after conviction, whether by way of a guilty plea or on a finding of guilt. So when we cry out for guilty sentence, for heavy sentence, we have to understand that unless we can detect the crime, unless we can investigate it, gather the evidence and preserve it with integrity, find the perpetrator, and mount a successful prosecution, we're not going to get the heavy sentence, even if it is the ultimate sentence of the death penalty. And I think that point is so lost on society, because so many people do their wrongs, not because they do not know that their acts are wrong, but because they feel that they can do those wrongs and get away with them. And so I'm pleased that this administration, led by Prime Minister Holness, has been focusing on getting the security forces better equipped, and under the leadership of the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of National Security. And I hear the celebrations in the public square when the perpetrators are apprehended in the heat of the moment. So we are making some strides, Madam Speaker. But I mentioned the sentencing issue because I recall when the 2015 amendments were being taken, I was singular in my dissent. I thought then, and I still think now, that the policy was wrong, as much as I understood the goals that they were seeking to achieve. But where someone pleads guilty, the law tells you that the Crown is relieved of responsibility to prove guilt. And I thought then, because of my over a decade experience in the court at both bench and bar, having seen what I saw, that you cannot use sentencing as a tool to clear the backlog in the courts. Wrong. And you know, Madam Speaker, it was just brought to my attention the report of my lone stance in the Senate, because I was the only one who voted against the amendment. Madam Speaker, I won't be much longer because I know time is of the essence. But I really want to say, Madam Speaker, like others who have spoken, that the Parliament must pass laws, good laws, for peace, order, and good government, as Section 48 of the Constitution says. And the executive, led by the Prime Minister, is responsible to the Parliament for the policies of the Cabinet being the chief instrument of policy. But you know, Madam Speaker, here is where I take a different view from many people. The work that needs to be done is not confined to the executive, the legislative, and the judicial branches of government. Each must do its part, rightly so. And when the public calls on us to do our part, it is a proper call. However, Madam Speaker, if the behavior of someone causes a problem, I verily believe that a change in behavior will be part of the solution. And it is not for us to then step in and relieve the criminal of his responsibility, or the household that creates the criminal. So, three things I want to say, since I know Madam Minister indicated that we're looking for solution. One, and I'm speaking to my colleagues, probably we have to bust up the education system and revolutionize the curriculum, because the formal education system must address the problems in the society, and the behavioral problems are not being addressed in the curriculum sufficiently. So that's one. Secondly, Madam Speaker, we have to stop tippy-toeing around the family unit. I think perhaps it's because Jamaica, like other societies, is so polyamorous that we really are afraid to take bold stands. But, Madam Speaker, too much iniquity and horror and brutality happening behind the closed doors of family units. And lastly, Madam Speaker, you know, when you run a seat, you come in contact with just about everybody because you're looking votes. Here is what I say. You see, we're in a special place to say to them, whether you vote for us or not, we don't condone wrongdoing. So my last plea is for all of us politicians to go out into the nooks and crannies of our constituency and say to those who we know are part of the criminal element in this country that enough is enough, and we will not condone it for the vote. We will not turn a blind eye to it for the vote, and if need be, turn them in. May it so please you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I believe that the members who have contributed have adequately covered the subject matter, that of violence, and specifically violence against women and children. So, Madam Speaker, I'm merely endorsing and supporting what has been said in the House. But I wanted to add another dimension to the conversation. Madam Speaker, for many years, we have been ambivalent, both as a parliament, as a government, and as a people, about violence. The ultimate measure of violence is the loss of life. It is a discrete way of measuring the concept of violence, especially if the loss of life was as a result of physical force. Madam Speaker, we measure that in Jamaica every day with the murder rate. It is an index for which we pay very close attention. Madam Speaker, but before we get to that accurate measure of violence, there are many other forms of violence for which the society, Madam Speaker, treats with less seriousness and outrage. And if, Madam Speaker, we were firm in our stance as a parliament, as a government, and as a people generally, against all forms of violence, then the ultimate escalation to the loss of life would be minimized. But, Madam Speaker, when will we agree as a society that when we beat our children mercilessly, we are teaching them that the only way to resolve conflict is through violence? Madam Speaker, when will we agree that the person's body is inviolable, meaning that I have a right for you not to touch me, and that every woman inside here has a right to say no? And we don't interpret it as feeling that you're better than me. When, Madam Speaker, it is the ambivalence in the society that is permissive of violence, that we don't recognize that everyone has that right to the preservation of their physical form, whether or not they are children or adults, that the human person is inviolable. Madam Speaker, when will we reach the point as a society where we come to the understanding that in our art form, in our music, and in our culture, in as much as you are free to reflect what is happening in the society, you also have a duty to place it in context. That to take up the AK-47 and turn it in a man's head, that is not right. And though you have the protection of the Constitution to sing about it, you also have a duty to the children who are listening to you to say, man, that is not right. And until the society comes to the understanding that all forms of violence is wrong, but we are not there yet. Because as I speak today, I'm expecting the headlines tomorrow. Leave this one alone. Leave that alone. Go talk about something else. But that is it. We are not yet serious. In a sense, Madam Speaker, I am happy to see the outrage, because it tells me that there is a change happening in the society. Unfortunately, it is for 9 days at a time. It is not sustained. And I have recognized that. I am not new to this wicket, Madam Speaker. I am not new to this wicket of speaking about violence. In 1996, the World Health Organization classified violence as a global problem and started to study the epidemiology of violence, started to place violence into a context. And, Madam Speaker, Jamaica has to take an instrumental approach to this matter. It can't be that we come to the House and we just give impassioned speeches. We have to study the problem in Jamaica and put in place the measures to solve it. Having recognized this whilst I was the Minister of Education, and having this struggle, the social struggle about how we discipline our children and how do we put in place non-violent means of behavior modification with great resistance from institutions that should be against the violence, but are grounded, indeed anchored to perspectives that are not enlightened. Madam Speaker, in 2019, I empaneled a commission, the National Commission for Violence Prevention. And that commission has started its work. It has presented to me recently, and I have approved their national strategic plan. It is not their intention to reinvent what has already been done, because if you look across all agencies in government, Madam Speaker, there is something there that speaks to some work that is already ongoing regarding violence, whether it is interpersonal, whether it is intimate partner violence, whether it is children, violence against women, domestic violence, all these forms of violence. The government is doing work. The challenge, Madam Speaker, is that it is not coordinated, and it is probably not funded, and it is not led by a national policy. And so what we're doing, we've been working very quietly. Professor Sams Vaughan, internationally known researcher in areas such as these, child development and other areas. She is the chairman of the commission, and it is empaneled our other experts in the field. And I'm expecting that within a year we should be getting a report which will enable the government then to come to the country with a comprehensive strategy. Not just a strategy for the government, but for all stakeholders to participate. So we can have a clear roadmap that how together, government, opposition, church, all stakeholders can speak with one common voice against violence. So, Madam Speaker, I want to reassure the nation that the outrage is there, the Parliament, myself as Prime Minister, our role is to respond to the outrage of the people and be the voice of the people. But more than that is to take that outrage to fuel new policy and make the changes that people want to see. And I want to assure the country that that process is ongoing and going fairly well. We don't always, we are not always able to bring these matters to the public attention. I have spoken about it before. It probably would never have made headlines. It probably has not made any headlines because it is not considered news. It may very well make some headlines now because there is a public attention to it. But assure the public, Madam Speaker, that the government takes this matter of violence seriously, and we have been working towards it. Madam Speaker, I wanted to, before I close, and I don't know if the leader of the opposition would agree with what I'm saying, but Jamaica still has a far way to go in treating with violence. But we have done something in this country which has had an impact on violence. Many Jamaicans may not immediately see it. But when we passed the Indicom legislation, it was a groundbreaking piece of legislation to curb state violence. Very important piece of legislation. Because if we're going to treat with violence and the use of force, then the state must be an example of how it uses force that it is authorized to use. So, Madam Speaker, it is not impossible for the country to make legislation and institutions to have an impact on how other institutions in the country use violence, such as our schools, such as families, intimate partners. So the capacity exists, but we have to get the country to the point where there is sufficient agreement broadly in the society that we can craft legislation towards it. So, Madam Speaker, when you look at the statistic of police killings pre-Indicom and post-Indicom, you can clearly see that there is a major change. It is not going to be an overnight change, because whilst you have changed the institutions, you are then going to have to rely on that institutional change making an impact on culture. So we still have some ways to go for the average policeman on the street to acknowledge that his authority, though he carries a firearm and he could use it, that is last resort. And that his role is there to serve and protect, regardless of how people speak terribly to them. That is a professionalism that is needed. And, Madam Speaker, I believe that this Parliament, this government, and our people, we have the capacity to look at where our society is going and say, this is not where we want Jamaica to be. So, Madam Speaker, I support the calls for the review of the sentencing process. And I'm happy that the leader of the opposition has acknowledged that it is time to look at that. When I visited Ms. Jackson's mother, her private plea to me and then her public statement is that she wants the perpetrator to feel the full effect of the law. She wants him to get the full sentence. She wants him to get justice. So, Madam Speaker, the pressure is building on us inside this House to respond. People are fearful. But just to be clear, Madam Speaker, the statement by the member from, is it East Central St. Catherine? Eastern St. Catherine is accurate. These underlying conditions that are there, the root problems, whilst we can take short-term measures, we can immediately change the sentencing, change policing, tougher measures, but the underlying issues has to be addressed. So, Madam Speaker, may it please you, and I hope that this debate will carry the public outrage and the energy for change for even longer than 9 days.
Thank you. I think the members of Parliament have spoken, and we have gone way outside the standing orders because the situation demands it. And now I'm going to ask us, as a last mark of respect for the lives lost and the gravity of the situation, acknowledging what we face as a nation, to stand and for a minute's silence in respect of the lives lost in this way. May their souls rest in peace, and may God's love encircle their families and their loved ones at this time. Statements.
Madam Speaker, I invite you to ask the Minister of Health, the Honorable Dr. Christopher Tufton, to make the statement.
Dr. Tufton.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, Madam Speaker, I rise in this Honourable House to provide an update on the Jamaica's vaccination response. Worldwide, Madam Speaker, we have seen we're over 128 million cases of COVID-19 infections and some 2.9 million deaths. Vaccination as a response to containing the disease is critical to getting our lives back to normal. Currently in Jamaica, Madam Speaker, we have recorded in excess of 38,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19 and 587 deaths. With this in mind, we recognize that as part of the country's response to the pandemic, vaccination is crucial. Madam Speaker, the goal therefore today, briefly, is to update the House and the country on the progress made in regards to the vaccination implementation plan. Jamaica began its vaccination exercise on Wednesday, March 10th, 2021. As of March 29th, we had vaccinated 37,508 persons across the island, with the following breakdown week by week as follows. Week 1, some 16,096, representing 94% of target. Week 2, 13,244, representing 116% of target. And so far for week 3, the third week ending tomorrow, Wednesday, 8,168, representing some 42% of target. Madam Speaker, for current week, the Ministry will continue its drive to inoculate persons 75 years and older, which we have announced and have been talking about. Members of this cohort are invited to make appointments by visiting the www.mohgov.gm or calling 888-1LOVE or 888-663-5686. An important note to our seniors, Madam Speaker, is that they may ask a friend, a relative, or a healthcare provider to assist them with booking such an appointment. For those persons who have already submitted their names to their healthcare provider or senior citizens associations, and they are over the age of 75 years, they do not need to reapply. Associations, they do not need to reapply. Once these lists, Madam Speaker, have been submitted to us, we will make provisions for the appointments to be made. Additionally, we have begun to vet our list of elderly who are registered with the National Health Fund and to identify those persons who are 75 years and older with multiple comorbidities, giving those persons priority prior to completing the full list of that age cohort. Those persons will be contacted by phone, and if they have not yet made an appointment, they will be invited to do so once there are available appointment slots. Madam Speaker, members of the public who are 75 years and older must have an appointment before visiting a vaccination site. That's the ideal. Once they come to the site, they will be asked to present a government-issued ID, or if they do not have a government-issued ID, a letter from a Justice of the Peace testifying to their age. Additionally, Madam Speaker, in keeping with the vaccination implementation plan, the Ministry of Health and Wellness will continue to vaccinate other members of the priority groups with we would have announced previously, which is healthcare workers, JCF, JDF, and government officials over 60, and most recently, all elected officials. In terms of the vaccination blitz, Madam Speaker, on Saturday, March 27, 2021, the Ministry of Health and Wellness hosted its first vaccination blitz at the National Arena. This was the first in a series of mass vaccination plans by the ministry to vaccinate some 1,000 persons in a day at a single location. Madam Speaker, the ministry is currently vaccinating persons 75 years and over island-wide, with a reserve list to include members of the Jamaica Fire Brigade and persons over 60. So, Madam Speaker, in the plan we had 3 phases. One was a 3-day-a-week, the other was a 5-day-a-week at selected sites, and the third phase, which we started on Saturday last, are the blitz sites. We started with 1, and that will be ramped up, as I will speak to shortly. Through the ministry, made provisions to vaccinate 1,000 persons last Saturday. Madam Speaker, we were able to inoculate some 662. Well, we had 662 registrations. 447 persons were vaccinated at the location, with no waste from open vials. Madam Speaker, I want to commend the health team, particularly those from the Southeast Regional Health Authority, who, working with the Jamaica Defence Force and the Jamaica Constabulary Force, Madam Speaker, and a number of volunteers, really made last Saturday an incident-free and very efficient process. And I think persons who benefited from that experience, or senior citizens, were well taken care of, and the testimonials have demonstrated the satisfaction level, which was fairly high. It was a learning experience for us. We observed, and we did not mind falling short of target just to be critical of the process. And so there'll be some refining done for this coming Saturday and beyond. But we think that this blitz phase is a phase that will significantly enhance the numbers over time. So we will host, Madam Speaker, our second vaccination blitz on Saturday, April 3rd, 2021, at the National Arena. And we're putting in place measures to increase the number of persons over 75. And we're introducing, Madam Speaker and colleagues, a second variable, if you will, to these blitz sites, which we hope to standardize across the country. And that is to leverage the political organizations in the respective geographic political constituencies or spaces to identify persons who meet the particular age cohort and to assist the process working with the electoral office to bring those persons out to the location. So, Madam Speaker, in terms of this Saturday, we have identified 5 members of Parliament in Kingston and St. Andrew. And those members of Parliament, we had a meeting with them last evening, and they are going to be playing an important role working with their elected reps at the municipal authority level, and are given targets to bring out a certain number of persons 75 years and over, and are given some mobilization support to assist in that process. And we will see how that works out on Saturday. But effectively, what it will mean, Madam Speaker, is that each of those members of Parliament will bring out or target 100 citizens in their constituencies, 75 years and over, and we will take from the official appointment list otherwise, because those persons will also register. They will assist in registering those persons. They will be assisted in terms of mobilization to take those persons out, and we will accommodate through the appointment system to ensure that we meet that target. Madam Speaker, if that process works, then it will become a critical part of the standard organization to mobilize and bring out the particular targeted age cohort that we require at any particular point in time. I have asked, Madam Speaker, the Minister of Local Government and Community Development, Minister Mackenzie, to assist me in that process at the national level. And of course, I'm working with my colleague, Minister of State, Minister Cuthbert Finn, to provide critical support. And also one of our very experienced backbenchers, if you will, Senator Natalie Rodriguez, Campbell Rodriguez, who is also going to assist us in terms of helping to organize the national rollout as it relates to the Blitz centers. Madam Speaker, the intention of the ministry is to host 25 vaccination Blitz sites over the next 3 months. The location of the Blitz sites are planned for the weekend of April 9th, will include, and I'm naming some locations now, not exclusively, we will add additional locations as we go along, the National Arena for Kingston and St. Andrew, Celebration Church in Portmore, the Seventh-day Adventist Office, St. Thomas, Montego Bay Convention Center in St. James, Lucy Anglican Church in Hanover, the Denby Showground in Clarendon, St. Mark's Anglican Parish Church in Manchester, St. Matthew's Anglican Parish Church in St. Elizabeth, the Bay Principe Resort in St. Anne, Trelawney Multipurpose Center in Trelawney, Gale Civic Center in St. Mary, and the Folly Oval in Portland. And these are sites that we're targeting for a national blitz on the 9th of April that will involve a mass mobilization of persons within the particular age cohort to begin a more robust attempt at getting to our herd immunity target. And this will continue as we have supplies available to inoculate the population. Madam Speaker, the Ministry will continue to review other locations, as said, for these sites, but we look forward to Saturday's attempt at a template which we hope to learn from and to roll out over the weeks and months to come. The special approach moving forward will include working with the Electoral Office of Jamaica, as I said, councillors and MPs to assist with the identification, registration and logistics of the movement, moving the target groups to the relevant locations. And however, it's important to note that the option to call the 888 number or to register online will always be available, but we are now embedding in that process additional support. Critical, Madam Speaker, to appreciate is that once we have adequate supplies of vaccines, the issue now becomes not just about identifying persons to come out. It's also about convincing persons to come out, because vaccine hesitancy is a big issue, hence the need to mobilize and to get all of us involved in the process. In terms of additional supply of vaccines, Madam Speaker, the Ministry expects to receive its third shipment of COVID-19 vaccines later this week. Ministry of Health and Wellness, through our procuring agent, the National Health Fund, and in collaboration with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, have been working assiduously to ensure the supply of safe vaccines for the Jamaican people. This House may recall, Madam Speaker, that we previously received 64,400 doses of AstraZeneca, and then the second batch, 14,400, was received from COVAX, or the COVAX facility, representing the first commercial shipment to the Caribbean region. On Thursday, April 1, Madam Speaker, we are expected to receive 75,000 doses of AstraZeneca vaccines from the African Medical Platform. These doses will aid significantly in the country's quest to vaccinate our elderly population, who are the ones that are most at risk. So we anticipate a new shipment later on this week, hopefully Thursday. Madam Speaker, there are other supply opportunities that are being pursued by the government with a clear policy instruction that all vaccines supplied to the country must be approved by the stated stringent approval authority, that being the WHO, the European Authority, and/or the FDA. Madam Speaker, while we await approval of vaccines, the strategic posture of the government has been to make every effort to ensure that we engage with all manufacturers through bilateral or direct contact. This is to ensure that as soon as vaccines are approved, that shipment can be guaranteed. I too have received, Madam Speaker, as you know, myself and many of us here, our first dose of the vaccine, and we are here standing to tell the tale, and I hope that that is interpreted nationally as a strong message that the vaccines are safe and represent a very important response to ending the significant threat that COVID-19 represents. Madam Speaker, I wish to remind those who have been vaccinated, however, that having received the first dose...
The Minister's time for speaking has expired.
3 more minutes and I'm finished, Madam.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to move that the member's time be extended by 5 minutes to allow him to complete his statement. May I please you, Madam Speaker.
Oh, sorry.
Yes. The question before the House is that the Minister's time be extended by 5 minutes to allow him to complete his presentation. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister.
Madam Speaker, just to quickly close, and I'll abandon the script just to make the point succinctly. It's important that those of us who have had our first dose do not become complacent in thinking that we are now safe from COVID-19. Indeed, we have had cases, a few cases, but cases nevertheless, of persons picking up the virus having had the vaccine. And it's not unique to Jamaica. It is a global phenomenon. The reason why the ones that require 2 doses is because that's when you will get the maximum protection. So I just want to urge Jamaicans and the 38 or so thousand who have already had their first dose and those who will get in the days and weeks and months to come, please continue to observe the protocol and to protect yourself and others around you until you get the second dose. But even then, the science is still going through the learning curve as it relates to the level of protection and to the extent to which the existing protocols can be relaxed over time. And I think that is so important as an appeal. We are still operating within the arrangements that have been announced early in the day. Madam Speaker, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Tufton. Just before, I have a concern, and because of the nature of the pandemic, I'm asking for your indulgence to address it. Dr. Tufton, when persons who are over the age of 75 live in a home with a caregiver who is not 75, could be 35, but is the only caregiver in the home, with 1 person over 75, 2 persons, or somebody who is ill, and you try to register, and you can't because you're not 75 and over, what is the position of the Ministry of Health? Because remember, that person who is younger is the only caregiver, and that is a person who goes out to get the meals and to do everything for the people in. If they are not vaccinated and they go out and get it and come in and infect the person who you have given, say, for example, the first injection at the age of 75 or older, it really makes no sense for the person inside. And there are concerns because there are situations now where there are persons who are caregivers, there are people who are very careful, they don't even bother with a helper, they have a cousin, a sister, a relative looking after the older persons, and they just cannot get vaccinated easily at this time. That is my concern.
Madam Speaker, the policy or the approach is always subject to review, and I'll certainly mention it to the clinical team. Just to say, though, that the person who receives the issue is all about risk. and where the risk is greatest, particularly when you have a limited supply, as you do in this case in terms of the vaccines. So we apply it to the over 75s and then to the over 60s because they have the greatest risk and are likely to overwhelm the hospital system. For the caregiver who is not in that age cohort, once they are in the vicinity of the person who got the first dose, they are likely to be more at risk than the person who got the dose. So that 75-year-old would have had higher levels of protection in the midst of an environment with a caregiver. So the caregiver would need to observe the protocol more in the interest of themselves than even in the interest of the person they are tending to. Now, that's not to say they are not at risk too, and that the policy cannot be reviewed, and I will mention it for review. But again, if we had 1 million doses of vaccines, it would be easy for me to say, we will just go ahead and give it to everybody. But with limited supplies, we really have to look at the degrees of risk and go for those who are greatest at risk. Thank you, Madam.
I respect that, but I ask that you look into some very severe situations where it's just not the normal. One person is there and you have people at risk. And as you say, one vaccine doesn't give you the protection. So if even I go out and you have young people picking up the virus, I can take it in and the situation. Thank you so much. Dr. Guy?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank the Minister of Health for giving the update to the country and to the Parliament on the vaccination program. And first of all, to say, as he has done, but as well from our side, our congratulations to the team on Saturday, as reports reveal that it was a seamless event, and that the partners, the Jamaica Defense Force and the Jamaica Constabulary Force and the team from the Ministry of Health did a splendid job. Madam Speaker, the anticipated numbers at the arena on Saturday were supposed to have been 1,000. And even though the ministry indicated that 91% of those who registered were vaccinated, it still fell short of the total amount that was originally envisioned. And we see elements of the vaccine resistance coming up, Madam Speaker, as a consequence of that. But it is very important, and more so now, that the effort is made to encourage Jamaicans through whatever means, from whatever quarters, to get themselves vaccinated, particularly when we have seen that over the past 3 weeks, and we could go back further, but let's confine ourselves to the past 3 weeks, we have been having an increase rate in the number of deaths. 38, then the following week was 44, and for the past 7 days we had 50 deaths. So it is more important, if this is not a indication for people who may have the resistance to taking the vaccine, for them to basically recognize that it can do that. Minister, you mentioned that the numbers were 16,000 the first week, 13,000 the second week, and I think it is under 5,000 so far for this week. 8,000. If you had the numbers of vaccines available to get the population vaccinated, as is the objective of herd immunity by the end of March 2022, you should at least be looking at 35,000 vaccines per week. 35,000 vaccines per week will give you just around 1.8 to 1.9 million persons vaccinated in a 12-month period. And we understand the situation that vaccines are not available as we should. But certainly, with these numbers, then you will have to ramp up. I know that you have indicated that there will be 25 other blitz sites around the island. And if you do that, And assuming that you do the 1,000 as is the case at the national arena, you still would not get the 35,000 that would give you in 12 months herd immunity. So we would like for, subject to availability of vaccine, to have a relook at that, Minister, to see that the target is achieved. We also consider that what you have done over the past weekend as a trial run, and certainly it will give you indications as what to do and what not to do in future. And as I said, we commend the team from the ministry for doing that. And we hope, and the government, yes. And Desmond, yes. The Minister of Local Government, yes. We also hope, Minister, that that type of protocol in terms of the teamwork that resulted in the almost seamless program on Saturday will be replicated across the 25 sites across the island as you open them, and more so for the first 12 that are going outside of KC in the month of April. Now, the location of the sites are important, and I know that, and I'll speak a little local now, that we're going to Gale St. Mary. And I hope the demographics in terms of the age group that you want have driven the location of these sites. But one should also consider, too, the transportation arrangements and how you're going to get these elderly persons to the site. We're happy on this side, Minister, that the EOJ has been morphed into the whole programs, because indeed about 3 weeks ago as the opposition we indicated to the country that this should be one of the areas explored to get their database. The only resistance to getting database is fingerprints from the EOJ. So getting the age numbers from the EOJ is an important element that should be utilized, and we would want to suggest to the ministry that be done aggressively, because the NHF data is insufficient for the numbers of persons who are over that particular age. Minister, I just want to make one observation as it relates to the call-in centers. There were some hitches earlier on. Many people had some glitches in trying to get the appointment through the call-in portal. We're hoping that that has been ironed out. I can say, however, that in terms of the internet access through the website, that is much easier in terms of getting the appointments. So we would ask for you to look at that one to ensure that the call-in ones are settled easier. You indicated that 75,000 AstraZeneca vaccines will be received hopefully by Thursday of this week under the African Medical Supply Platform. Could you indicate to the country, Minister, what of the other amounts? Because we were told that 1.8 million doses would be available through, or would be coming through this particular platform. And if you could indicate to the Parliament where that is. The matter of vaccine and vaccine unavailability. And we recognize, Minister, that certain countries, the European Union mandated some of their countries or the manufacturers not to export vaccine. And we saw recently that similarly happened in India because of the spike that they were having and the ban on exporting of AstraZeneca vaccines from the Serum Institute of India. You did indicate in your presentation that the government is still exploring bilateral relationships, and didn't in this, but in some other forum you indicated diplomatic channels in getting vaccines. Now, we have seen where the Cuban Soberana 2 has reached clinical trial phase number 3 as of the 3rd of March of this year, and hopefully very shortly will have completed that and get approval from the World Health Organization. It is our view, Minister, and I'm hoping it is, that the government has already joined the queue where Cuba is concerned as part of the vaccine supply as you have indicated, once they have been approved by WHO and the other two regulatory authorities, which you use as European Union Regulatory Authority and FDA, any of the three, if it does, I think that Jamaica should have already been in the line in terms of making representation to our nearest neighbor to see whether Jamaica could benefit from that. Because right now, as you know, and as all Jamaica know, and in fact, indeed, the entire world knows, everybody's looking out there to try and get vaccines. Minister, I don't think I think it is very timely, too, that you reiterated the whole position of observing the protocols. And we want to see on this side, as we have said repeatedly, despite the fact that some people feel that the opposition is not supportive of that, right? We are encouraging Jamaicans to continue wear the mask wearing. We continue to encourage Jamaicans to practice the physical distancing. We continue to urge Jamaicans to abide by the other ones which have been set down in terms of not having the congregating of people, because we recognize that, as I said last week, Prime Minister, all of us are in this thing together. It's Jamaica. All of us are Jamaicans. And we have seen, unfortunately, by the deaths, that is no respect of political parties who die or who get admitted. So the fact of the matter is that all of us in this fight together. And we continue to urge our fellow citizens to obey the protocols. Because when you look at the numbers, over almost just under 500 persons are in hospital right now as a consequence of COVID-19 diagnosis. 475 it had gone. It's dropped by 3 or 4 yesterday. So we are in the 70s still. And the reality, Prime Minister, as you know, and as I've said before, that the measures that were instituted over the weekend gone, and for this next two coming weekends, will not start to reap the measures until sometime down the road. So we are saying from this side that our endorsement and support of the measures in trying to keep the numbers at bay is on the same page where yours is. We will have very critical statements to make sometimes in terms of how things are done. And we have the right to do that. But this particular one, we are on the same page where that is concerned. And I want Jamaicans to understand, accept, and appreciate that lives matters. Lives matters. And we're not talking about black lives or Indian lives or so. Lives matters right here in Jamaica. And it matters if we continue to observe the protocols, we keep away, and Prime Minister, I know you're cutting a jingle for this one, Tana your yard. That is what is critical. We have some differences in terms of how the lockdown is instituted. And we have heard that already, and we have discussed that right across the divide here. But in terms of whenever you have that, you need to stay home. You need not to go out, right? You know, Prime Minister, and it's the Minister's statement, but there was an incident that happened supposedly in Spanish Town where somebody was trying to jump off a roof. And it was captured vividly on social media. And when you looked at the persons who came out to see what was happening there, not one Jackman or Jill woman had a mask on. Everybody came out and they were just you know, chatting and co-mingling. Thank you, Tony. Right? Co-mingling and just having a good time.
Member,
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The time for speaking has expired. I know it has been a long time, but the matter is important. I've given you. How much time?
No, Madam Speaker, I am just concluding. I thank you very much for your patience.
Madam Speaker, I really want to recognize, commend the member for his closing remarks. It is indeed about all lives. All lives. No, but in all seriousness, all lives matter in this case, and All lives should matter in any case, and certainly as it relates to the COVID response, we have had too many losses, and indeed, I believe many that could have been avoided if the protocols were observed. Just quickly, Madam Speaker, just for clarity of and to respond to the queries. The Saturday's vaccine blitz was an attempt at understanding the process as it was an attempt at getting more persons or the highest number of persons in one location vaccinated, because we see it as the important component of the mass vaccination of Jamaicans once we have supplies in hand. So it was about the learning process. Now, this week, Saturday, by introducing the component of our elected representatives playing a role in mobilizing based on their knowledge of their local environment, we believe that you will see more numbers. And once we tweak and get that right, we're going to roll that model out across the country. And so it's a process, but I think we're getting better at it. And we thank the public for the patience that they have exercised up to this point. The issue of the deaths, of course, is concerning, as you've said. But I will say to this House and to the country that we are already seeing some signs on the horizon that things are improving. Up to the report on last week, and we meet every day and we discuss the issues and we brief cabinet and cabinet subcommittee. But the latest reports are suggesting that hospitalization rates are slowing. The reproductive rate is slowing, coming closer to 1. It was 1.1 a week ago. 2 weeks ago, it was 1.3, and it's now closer to 1. Once we get it below 1, it means that we will see a reduction in the number of positives. And remember now, there is a direct correlation between the positivity rate, the number of persons infected, as a percentage of the overall the persons who have been tested, and hospitalization. Because the more people that get the virus, the greater the probability of persons being hospitalized, particularly the over 60s. So once you see that trend coming down, it is a good indicator to buy into. Now, what that means is that we have to follow those protocols. What it also means is that it is a justification that the government of the day is taking the right decisions as necessary in order to control the spread of the virus and to overwhelm the public health system. And we will talk more about that tomorrow at the subcommittee meeting, member, that we have at 10 o'clock. In terms of the blitz sites, it changes, so we will evolve. The sites were, primarily these initial sites were determined by the team on the ground at the level of the regions and the parishes. And they would have factored in that the mobilization that was possible, access and so on. But we will adjust as we go along, so these are not fixed necessarily for the long period. In terms of the EOJ member, I just received, having had dialogue today with the director, a list from the electoral list of 60s to 75 and 75 and over, or 60 to 74 and 75 and over. And this is broken out into constituencies. And we're going to be making our ask that this be made available to the political representatives so you know exactly who these persons are in your constituency or in your region, and therefore you know exactly who to approach. Now, it's important that we appreciate too that you have to convince in some instances, and that's hopefully one of the values we are hoping to extract from the collaboration with the political representatives, as we are with so many other organizations that we're dealing with, the church and several other organizations. So we are collaborating with the Electoral Office. In terms of the call center, when we started, we had approximately 60 persons manning the lines, and we got overwhelmed on the first day. I believe we're over 100 now, or close to doubling that. So I think the call centers are now, the calling will be more efficient. In terms of the African platform member, yes, there is a commitment for 1.9 million doses. And as far as we're concerned, that commitment is still in place. The issue now becomes scheduling. And that is a function, as you have correctly pointed out, of availability of vaccines. So this 75,000 doses is a good start. Under the current circumstances, it will enable us to continue the program. We have a commitment for the first week in April for 26,000 from the COVAX facility, and that will further bolster our offering to the public. And we expect to get better particulars as the month of April progresses. So I will keep those informed on that. But the commitment is still very much there. In terms of the vaccines that are going through clinical trials, but are yet to be approved by the WHO, and it's not just about Cuba. There are over 80 vaccine clinical trials that are taking place now globally. The key ones are the Chinese, the Russian, Sputnik, and the Indian outside of the AstraZeneca, and then you have Cuba. We're having discussions with all of those potential sources. And in keeping with the WHO process, we have positioned ourselves, and we have collaborated in some instances with our Caribbean colleagues in anticipation of approvals where minimum offers are required to secure sources so that we group the purchase to benefit from multiple country demand. So the answer to your question is yes, we're working closely with those manufacturers. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Announcements?
Laid on the table of the House today are the following. Ministry Paper number 20 of 2021 entitled Cabinet Agenda Issues dated December 14, 2020. Annual Report of the Child Protection and Family Service Agency for the year 2017-2018. Annual Report of the Council of Community Colleges of Jamaica for the years 2017-2018 and 2018-2019. And the Certified Appropriation Account, Head 46,000, Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport for the year 2017-2018.
Bills brought from the Senate.
The following is a message from the Speaker, from the President of the Senate. To the Honorable House of Representatives, I have the honor to advise the Honorable House of Representatives that on the 26th day of March, 2021, a bill entitled An Act to Apply a Sum out of the Consolidated Fund to the service of the year ending on the 31st day of March, 2022, and to appropriate the sums granted in this session of Parliament and for matters connected therewith and related thereto, was passed in the Senate without amendment. I also have the honor to advise the Honorable House of Representatives that on the 26th day of March, 2021, a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Disaster Risk Management Act in order to adequately implement and address measures to combat various calamitous events, including a pandemic, and for connected matters, was passed in the Senate with 3 amendments for which the Senate desires the concurrence of the Honorable House. Please see the list of amendments circulated. Signed, Thomas Tavares Swinson, President of the Senate.
Minister.
Madam Speaker, I now ask for your consent that the Senate amendments to the bill shortly entitled the Disaster Risk Management Amendment Act 2021 be now considered and approved.
Consent given. Minister.
I am asking for the approval, Madam Speaker.
There are no other individuals who wish to speak?
Yes, ma'am, there are. If I may, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I've just had a quick look at the amendments proposed by the Senate or made by the Senate to the bill. Two of them are substantive amendments. The first of them is to modify an amendment that we made in this House in committee, and in a way which I don't think I can accept. We had said, and this arose out of a specific commitment that was given by the Minister of Justice, to say that these offences would not go on the criminal record of the person. And I made the point that the bill didn't say that. And we approved an amendment, which was the addition of a new subsection 12, which would be inserted into section 52 of the Act, which said that an offence under this Act or regulations made under this Act shall not form part of the criminal record of this offender. The Senate has changed that to say an offence under regulations made pursuant to section 26 shall not form part of the criminal record of the offender. But the offence of breaching an order under section 26 is an offence created by section 52 of the Act. More specifically, it is created by the addition of the new paragraph C in subsection 1 of section 52, and which says that failure to comply with a measure specified by order pursuant to section 26(2) is an offence to which the potential penalty is a fine of up to $1 million or a term of imprisonment of up to a year. And then there's the ticketing provisions that allow for that as an alternative way of proceeding, though not mandatory. So this particular amendment, which has modified what the House did to say that it's only the offences under the regulations that don't go on to the criminal record of the person, is inconsistent with what we understood the agreed position to be, and we're not comfortable with that. There was another point that the bill, the point that I was just speaking to, would affect what is on page 5 of the bill, clause 5 of the bill, which deals with the amendments to section 52 of the Act, and the specific provision which we had imported into the bill is at the bottom of page 8 of the bill, which is all part of the same section. It's a long section, and it's the new 12, and they have modified that 12 in a way which I don't agree with personally. Then the other point I want to make is to do with service. The member from Southwest St. Andrew had made the point that service by electronic means, which is deemed, there's a deeming provision that says it's deemed to have occurred the next business day after the document is sent at an email address of the addressee. The point was made that email could be sent late at night, and the deeming should not apply unless it's sent prior to close of business on the preceding day. And an amendment was made to do that. That amendment has been reversed by the Senate, and those words which were put in to the provision. And the provision is in clause 6 of the bill on page 9, which is the insertion of a new section 52 big A into the Act. And the specific provision that dealt with this is subsection 3 of the new 52A. And if the bill that is before us here, which is a bill as amended in the House, has the words that were added to meet the point that the member had made, those words are being removed from this. And Madam Speaker, we have a difficulty with that. We don't like either of those two amendments. And there was also an amendment proposed in the Senate by the opposition, which would have addressed the bigger point that I had made last week, which was not supported by the majority in the Senate, which would have had the effect of ensuring that the orders made under Section 26 only last for up to 14 days unless they come to Parliament and are approved by both houses within that period. That is an important point and an important amendment which was not accepted in the Senate by the majority side. That amendment is not before us now, but the specific amendments that are, 3 of them, the final one is really inconsequential. It's just an amendment to a form, but the other 2 are substantive, and we are not in agreement with them, Madam Speaker.
Yes, AG, you may go ahead.
Madam Speaker, may it so please you, permit me on behalf of the Minister to respond to the government side deciding to ask for affirmation of the Senate amendments. In particular, the proposed amendment from the Senate in respect of Clause 5F12. Madam Speaker, as we understood the concerns raised last week in the House, that there was discomfort with an executive order creating offences for which the Parliament had not given its approval. Madam Speaker, upon consideration of that concern and taking into account the deliberations, the advice is that the Act creates numerous other offences that would have gone through the parliamentary process, and so it would be faulty, in fact, outright erroneous, in an attempt to address the concern raised by the Leader of Opposition to say, by way of concession, that no offence under the Act would carry a criminal record. And that is the distinction which the amendment from the Senate accepted, being put forward for acceptance, makes. Now, what it says is that regulations, which under the Interpretation Act includes an order, and also set out here for the avoidance of doubt, that any offence that is created pursuant to a regulation, in that case, the executive order, which would not have come to the House, would not form part of the criminal record. So the concern is addressed without doing harm to the other provisions, because a disaster that would give rise to the Act being used is not confined to a pandemic or the use of an executive order in the manner set out under Section 26. And I think had the honourable member understood the provision sufficiently and the entire Act, he perhaps would understand and accept that it is unwise to then provide for no offence forming part of the criminal record. The particular issue of concern has been addressed. So when it says an offence made under regulations pursuant to Section 26, Section 26 is the section under which the Prime Minister would make the order, such as the DRM orders that are of concern. So, just for those who are listening, Madam Speaker, we understand that, but the concern raised has been addressed and is being addressed without causing problem for the scheme of the law. May it so please you.
Madam Speaker, the graciousness of the Attorney General's reply is not lost on me. I would just say this. The order is made under Section 26. the offense is created by Section 52(1)(c. And the way the Senate has amended it does not address my point. I accept that the intention was not to create a situation where offenses that arise under other aspects of the Act don't attract a criminal record was not before the House. And the formulation that was created in committee may have been too broad. And I would have had no problem, for example, instead of saying, as it currently does, an offense under this Act could say an offense under Section 52(1)(c) of this Act. I wouldn't have a problem with that, or regulations made under this Act. But as it stands here, I think it is the Attorney General who has misunderstood the legal position. And I do not accept her explanation of it. And I think she's quite wrong, and we will not support it in its current form.
AG?
Madam Speaker, I must crave your indulgence because the Section 52 says in 52B, that is the section being amended, that B says, without reasonable excuse, fails to comply with a direction imposed by an authorized officer under 27(1)(b, and it sets it out. So the connection has to be made not only in respect of 26(c), but also in respect of 52(b).
Madam Speaker,
you have to
the concern
read the
I
entire
had was
act
to
in
do
its
with the
totality.
orders made by the Prime Minister, which can create criminal offences without parliamentary approval. The way in which that has been achieved in the bill is by Section 52(1)(c), which says that a measure under an order made under Section 26, which is the orders made by the Prime Minister, is now a criminal offence. It is that one which should not, in my view, create a criminal record on the offender. I understood that to have been accepted, but I'm not sure now whether it is or it isn't. But from our point of view, the way it has been done by the Attorney General is defective, and we will not support it.
Minister Chong?
Madam Speaker, I crave your indulgence because the back and forth, there are persons listening on. An order is not made under Section 27. It's made under Section 26. The reference in Section 26 to Section 27 in Section 52 has to be read in relation to the order made under 26. It is under that order that you have authorized officers giving instructions, respectfully.
Minister Chalk?
Leader of the Opposition, it is clear that what we don't want is for those provisions that the Prime Minister ordered, those under the tiers, that they should not form a part of the criminal record. Those come under Section 26. So what we're really saying is that those are the orders that come under Section 26. So to the extent then that, well, if you want to say that add Section 52(1)(c) and Section 26, that's fine, because there's no doubt that we want to get exactly that it should not form a part of the criminal record. So if you're saying that you add 52(1)(c) and Section 26, because Section 26 that really sets out the offences. Yes. Instead of Section 26.
Well, the procedure is a bit irregular, but where 12 says an offence under this Act, which would include any offence under the Act, which the Attorney General is saying is too broad, can be confined to an offence under Section 52(1)(c) of this Act. She's suggesting maybe it should say B as well. I'm less concerned about that, but I would accept B as well.
Okay, so but the main thing, Leader of the Opposition, the main thing is that it is not all offences under the Act. It is only those provided under the tiers. You get me? In other words, which may change from time to time. But I would also like to say to Leader of the Opposition, the other point which was canvassed in the Senate and which you have brought up, I don't think it's to have an affirmative resolution of these. It's not appropriate, and the reason why it's not appropriate, because in most of these disasters, it may only last a week or two. I mean, this one is a most unusual pandemic. But what is anticipated in most cases, a week or two. So by the time the Prime Minister or the Minister authorize these various offences, within 14 days, there's no need for the Parliament to approve them, because once this pandemic is over, this is the end of these tiers. So what we're really saying that what we have provided here is enough, because the offences and the penalties under the offences, in most, if not all cases, should not last more than weeks rather than months. Thank you, Madam.
AG, final.
Madam Speaker, I suspect that you will have a vote taken on the matter, but I do crave your indulgence for the records to show, because accuracy matters. Yes. Accuracy matters. So, and again, there are always contending views about the law. Section 27 indicates that where an order has been made under Section 26, an authorized officer may, if he believes it is necessary in the interest of public safety or public health, and subject to such directions as the Director General may give, do any of the following in relation to the declared area. And that is why 52 references 27 and 27 references 26 under which the order is made.
Madam Speaker, Section 27 allows the authorized person to give a whole host of directions. Previously, under Section 52, if those directions were not complied with and a warning was given and the warning was not heeded, that amounted to an offence. This bill takes away the need for the warning. So if you breach the direction of the authorized person, that is an offence, whether a warning is given or not. It also makes a failure to comply with a measure made under Section 26, which is the orders made by the PM, itself a separate criminal offence. That is what the paragraph C in 52(1) does. And I am saying that if that is a matter which comes to the point where a person is charged or ticketed, it should not go on their permanent criminal record. And in response to what Member Chuck said, the Minister of Justice said, he's saying, well, these orders typically last a very short period of time. We are in a pandemic that has gone on for a year. We don't know how long it will last. We hope not much longer. The amendment that was put to the Senate was saying that if an order is made, it must come here in order to have a life beyond 14 days. If it doesn't have, and this is similar to how states of emergency work. If an order is made by the minister, the Prime Minister in this instance, it will last 14 days, and if it is approved by affirmative resolution by both houses within that 14-day period, then it will last for the duration of the order itself. The order might say, for example, that it lasts for 90 days or 180 days. I am responding to something that Member Chuck said, Attorney General, so please stop interrupting and let me respond to what Member Chuck said. So the point is that it is not in every instance that the order is going to be a very short duration. And that is why proper democratic practice requires that those orders which create offences by virtue of the bill and the amendments being made by this bill should come to Parliament to be approved. But that has been rejected in the Senate. And I just wanted to make that clear again.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
Hold on.
No, I can't interpret her look.
Hold on a minute, member. The minister has already proposed that we vote on the amendments that came to us from the Senate. I'm asking all the members to have a read of sections 26, 27, and 52 so that I may be able to place the amendments which have already been approved by the Senate to the House for a vote.
Madam Speaker, I have in my hand the list of amendments, and I had been indicating to you previously my desire to make a comment on the list I have in my hand.
I was going to call on you to speak. I didn't realize you were indicating previously.
That's the only, that's the only reason why I stood.
Go right ahead, member.
Thank you very much. Madam Speaker, I wanted to place on record my disappointment in how the amendments are being handled. And what do I mean by that? I assumed when I came and received the list that these were the amendments from the Senate, meaning that senators on their own came up and decided that they wanted to make these amendments. I have been grateful for the explanation of the AG that that really wasn't so. That what it was is a reconsideration of the discussion that took place here in the Parliament the week before. Now, I really am going to suggest in the future that if there is an amendment to be made on that basis, that common courtesy be afforded to the members on this side.
Thank you, member. AG, your final comment, please.
Madam,
after which members...
Madam Speaker.
AG, hold a moment, please. Your final comment. When you take your seat, members, we will put the amendments from the Senate to a vote.
Madam Speaker, I thank you. Simply because this matter is of such great public importance, again, accuracy matters. It doesn't matter what perspective we have, accuracy matters, and the proceedings in this House is governed by rules. So that my understanding is that the discussion was on what was before us from the Senate, not what didn't come, but was contemplated. So that the standing orders, which are regulations of the Constitution, set out the procedure on Senate amendments at Standing Order 60. So let the impression not be given that here in the House, on consideration of amendments from the Senate, after a bill has been passed here and is returning because we are shutting down amendments, the matter is not, that particular matter is not before us, though I readily say that it is a matter that is to be considered, but it is not before us. So let the public, whom we are entrusted to serve in their best interests, not be led astray by misinformation. May it please you.
Thank you, AG. Members, those in favor of the amendments here before us today? We have a divide. Clerk?
Mr. Bartlett? Mr. Bartlett? Mr. Brown? Dr. Brownberg? Dr. Chang? Dr. Charles? Mr. Charles? Mr. Chin? Mr. Chuck? Mr. Clark? Dr. Clark? Mr. Cousins? Ms. Crawford? Mrs. Cuthbert-Flynn? Ms. Daly? Ms. Davis? Mr. Davis? And Ms. Davis is here? Dr. Dunn? Mr. Golding? Mr. Graham? Ms. Grange? Mr. Green? Dr. Guy? Ms. Hamilton? Ms. Hannah? Mr. Henriquez? Mr. Henry? Mr. Henry? Mr. Holness? Mrs. Holness? Oh, sorry, Madam Speaker. Mr. Hutchinson? Mr. Hilton? Mr. Jackson? Mr. Lawrence? Ms. Lee? Mrs. Malahufort? Mr. Main? Mr. McKenzie? Mr. Miller? Ms. Morrison? Mr. Montague? Mr. Morgan? Ms. Nita? Mr. Paulwell? Mr. Phillips? Dr. Phillips? Mr. Robertson? Mr. Robinson? Mr. Samuda? Mr. Shaw? Mr. Sibbles? Mr. Slowly? Ms. Smith? Mr. Terrelong? Dr. Tufton? Mrs. Vaz? Mr. Vaz? Mr. Warmington? Dr. Wheatley? Mr. Williams? Mrs. Williams? Mr. Wilson? Mr. Witter? Mr. Wright?
Order in the House. The motion has been carried. 34 in the affirmative. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. Petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I'll move to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the Urban Renewal Tax Relief Amendment Act 2021.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move, be it resolved, with reference to the Select Committee appointed by this Honourable House on the 12th day of January 2021, to sit jointly with a similar committee appointed by the Senate to complete the statutory review of the Cybercrimes Act 2015, and the Select Committee appointed by this Honourable House on the 19th day of January 2021 to sit jointly with a similar committee appointed by the Senate to complete the statutory review of the Electricity Act 2015, that the committees be allowed to hold virtual meetings, whether wholly virtual or partly virtual and partly physical, utilizing available information and communication technologies in the manner more specifically outlined below. Preserving the rights, powers, and privileges, including voting rights, normally accorded to a member of a committee, the aforementioned committees are thereby empowered to 1. Convene and hold meetings in virtual spaces created using information and communications technology, which shall be considered committee meetings for the purposes of the mandate of either committee. 2. To allow access and participation from remote locations, as are enabled by means of information and virtual technologies, by members and other persons authorized by the committees. 3. Include members accessing and participating from remote locations as a part of their quorum. 4. Receive, consider, deliberate on, and respond to feedback and submissions in formats, modes, and media, and via platforms, modes, and media enabled by means of information and communication technologies from any person. And 5thly, to consider any and all information generated, communicated, and received via formats, platforms, modes, or media as enabled by means of information and communication technologies as forming a part of the record of the committee's meetings. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will remove for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take these motions. Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House I will move, be it resolved, with reference to the resolution approved by this Honourable House on the 29th day of September 2020, appointing a Public Accounts Committee, that the committee be allowed to hold hybrid meetings that are partly virtual and partly physical, utilizing available information and communication technologies in the manner more specifically outlined below. Preserving the rights, powers, and privileges, including voting rights, normally accorded to a member of a committee, the committee is hereby empowered to 1. Convene and hold meetings in virtual spaces created using information and communication technologies, which shall be considered committee meetings for the purpose of the mandate of either committee. 2. To allow access and participation from remote locations, as are enabled by means of information and virtual technologies, by members and other persons authorized by the committee. 3. Include members accessing and participating from remote locations as a part of its quorum. 4, to receive, consider, deliberate on, and respond to feedback and submissions in formats, modes, and media, and via platform modes and media enabled by means of information and communication technologies from any person. And fifthly, to consider any and all information generated, communicated, and received via formats, platforms, modes, or media as enabled by means of information and communication technologies as forming a part of the record of the committee's meeting. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Questions and answers to questions? Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to sittings of the House. Motions for leave to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. Public business.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move for a recommittal of the item, motion given orally, to enable the Minister of Health to move the resolution regarding the tobacco bill.
Thanks, House Leader. I have. Hang on.
Madam Speaker, the motion is actually in the name of the Minister of Agriculture, who not indicated there. May so please you, Madam Speaker.
You have it? Move quickly. Move quickly. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the Tobacco Industry Regulation, Validation and Indemnity Repeal Act 2021.
Thanks, Minister. House Leader. Public business.
Madam Speaker, the next item on public business will be the bill entitled the Amendment of the National Insurance Act, which will be taken by the Minister of Labour and Social Security. May I please you, Madam Speaker.
Copy of the bill. There's a bill here. The bill is in the House. It was laid on the table of the House. Oh, but the clerk is the right person to ask. I hope I didn't give you recollections of the past. Oh, good. Madam Speaker, today I will be opening the debate on the National Insurance Validation, Indemnification and Amendment Act 2021. This bill seeks to amend the National Insurance Act 1966, National Insurance General Benefits Regulation 1966, and the National Insurance Sugar Workers Transitional Regulations 1966. The National Insurance Act and its supporting regulations govern inter alia the payment of benefits and collection of contributions under the National Insurance Scheme, commonly known as the NIS. The NIS is a compulsory contributory funding scheme which seeks to provide social security coverage to all employed persons in Jamaica. The NIS offers protection to the worker and his or her family against loss of income emanating from old age, injury on the job, sickness, and/or death. Madam Speaker, let me take this opportunity to provide background information which will explain the reasons behind the proposed revision of the Act and supporting regulations. Since 2007, the sums expended for benefit payments have consistently exceeded contributions received by an average of approximately $2 billion per annum. This negative trend was only broken when the implementation of the recommended reform measures to increase contribution rates in financial year 2019-2020. The actuarial review as of March 31, 2013, indicated that cash flow from the National Insurance Fund, NIF, was projected to become negative by 2025 and depleted by 2033 if reform measures were not implemented with urgency. This report recommended a suite of reform measures to substantially increase benefits and the rates of contribution. The actuarial review conducted as of March 31, 2016, revealed that as a result of the investment performing better than projected, among other things, there was marginal improvement that resulted in a 4-year extension to the time projected for the depletion of the funds, with cash flow depletion projected for 2029 and fund exhaustion in 2037 as compared to 2033. Madam Speaker, the experts have advised that the cost of delay in implementing reform measures is very high. The reform measures recommended by the actuaries and approved by the Cabinet included, among other things, a phased increase in the rates of contributions to the NIS and an increase in benefits. The amendments which are proposed by the bill are to effect the following changes in the legislation. Dealing first with the increase in contributions and the insurable wage ceiling. The National Insurance Act makes provision for employed and self-employed persons to contribute a specified percentage of their earnings up to a maximum threshold per annum as specified in the legislation. The NIS also provides a minimum contribution rate for domestic workers, voluntary contractors, and self-employed persons. The bill seeks to increase the contribution rate of employed, self-employed, and members of the Jamaica Defence Force, JDF, from 5% per annum to 5.5% with effect from April 1, 2019 to March 31, 2020, and to 6% per annum with effect from April 1, 2020, Clause 3A and the second schedule, paragraph 1B. Additionally, Madam Speaker, the bill seeks to increase the flat rate contribution of self-employed persons, domestic workers, and voluntary contributors from $100 per week to $150 per week, with effect from January 1st, 2019 to December 31st, 2019. $200 per week with effect from January 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2020. And $250 per week with effect from January 1st, 2021, as contained in paragraph 1A, 2, and 3 of the second schedule. Madam Speaker, it should be pointed out that the employer is required to pay a half of the contribution due to employed persons, with the other half being deducted from the salary of the insured persons. The total contribution is to be remitted to the Tax Administration, TAJ, for the NIS by the employer. Madam Speaker, Parliament is being asked to note that employed and self-employed persons contribute to the NIS based on their level of income up to a maximum defined wage threshold, which is classified as the insurable rate ceiling, IWC Clause 3B of the bill and paragraph 1B of the second schedule. They seek to increase the insurable wage ceiling from $1.5 million per annum to $3 million per annum with effect from April 1st, 2021 to March 31st, 2022, and $5 million per annum with effect from April 1st, 2022. We turn now to the increase in benefits, Madam Speaker. Increase in old age, invalidity, and widowers benefit. The various benefits which are paid under the NIS are set out in Part 3 of the National Insurance Act. These benefits include old age, invalidity, and widowers' pensions. The amount payable varies according to the type of benefits. The rates of the various benefits are specified in the third schedule of the Act. Madam Speaker, this bill seeks to increase the full flat rate paid for the old age, invalidity, and widowers' pension from $2,800 to $3,400 per week with effect from April 1st, 2018. This amendment is sought pursuant to paragraph 1 and 2 of the third schedule of the bill. Paragraphs 4, 2, and 3 of the National Insurance General Benefits Regulation 1966 makes provision for the payment of old age, invalidity, and widowers' pension in respect of persons who only partially satisfy the contribution conditions. Clause 8 of the bill seeks to amend paragraph 4.2 of said regulations by increasing the three-quarter rate of said pension from $2,100 per week to $2,550 per week with effect from April 1, 2018. In addition, this clause seeks to increase the half rate as set out in paragraph 4.3 of the National Insurance General Benefit Regulations from $1,400 per week to $1,700 per week with effect from April 1, 2018. Special anniversary and sugar workers' pension. Madam Speaker, it should be pointed out that the rates payable to a special pensioner, a person who was born before the first day of January 2008, as specified in Section 10A of the National Insurance Act, and the sugar workers' pension, as set out in paragraph 3C of the National Insurance Sugar Workers' Transitional Regulations 1966 are pegged to the half rate of the old age and invalidity pensions. Consequently, the rates payable to a special pensioner and sugar worker are also proposed to be increased with effect from April 1, 2018 to $1,700 per week. These increases are specified in clauses 4 and 9 of the bill, respectively. Increases in funeral grant. Section 20 of the National Insurance Act makes provision for the payment of a funeral grant on the death of an insured person under the NIS who satisfy the relevant contribution conditions. The bill seeks to increase the funeral grant from $80,000 to $90,000 with effect from August 1st, 2018, as set out in paragraph 7 of the third schedule. Amendment to Section 23A1 National Insurance Act. Section 23A of the National Insurance Act sets out the legal mechanism by which the minister may increase benefits payable in respect of the NIS. Currently, the minister is required under Section 23A1 to increase the benefits specified in Section 2 by order at a rate of 10% every 2 calendar years. This amendment was introduced by the National Insurance Amendment Act 2012, Jamaica Gazette number 14, 2012. However, Madam Speaker, the Act, as presently stated, does not compensate the impact of the prescribed automatic increases on the financial stability of the NIS. In the context of the present status of the NIS, it would be inimical to foster a credo of automatic biannual increases to the beneficiaries, to the benefits. From a policy perspective, a more prudent approach would be to first subject any decision in respect of increase in benefits to the results of an actuarial review. This, Mr. Speaker, had not been previously practiced as a norm. It will be done now to ensure that we do not continue to put at risk the longevity of the National Insurance Scheme. With effect from the 4th day of April 2016, Section 41 of the National Insurance Act was amended to enable triennial actuarial reviews. Clause 5A of the bill seeks to amend Section 23A by specifying that the minister may increase the benefits referred to in Section 2 by order subject to affirmative resolution. The benefits referred to in subsection 2 includes special pension, old age, and invalidity pension that the benefits specified in the third and the benefits specified in the third schedule. However, Clause 5B specifies that the minister is to be guided. This is very important. The minister is to be guided by the results of an actuarial review conducted under Section 41(1)(a) of the Act in establishing the rates of increase. This is a very important clause, Madam Speaker, because it seeks to ensure that we do not act carelessly in just simply responding to demand for increases and running the risk of putting the fund at risk for the future. Validation and amendment of increases. Madam Speaker, all the above-mentioned provisions are subject to Clause 2.1 of the bill, which validates and confirms the actions of the persons acting on behalf of the ministry who have been paying out the increased benefits and collecting contributions in good faith since April 1st, 2018, as approved by the Cabinet Decision 4518, dated December 17, 2018. Clause 2.2 also indemnifies those persons from liability for paying out the increased benefits and collections contributions in good faith. All these increases that have been given in the past, this indemnity covers them, because up to now, it wasn't specifically stated an indemnity given. Exemptions from liability for offense. Madam Speaker, it is evident that the increases in contribution rates became effective before the relevant legislative amendments were made. It has been recognized that employers could be liable for criminal prosecution for non-payment of the increased contribution during the period under this legislation and until it is passed. This poses a challenge, as the employer would not have been under a legal obligation to make these payments. It's quite an incredible situation, actually, Madam Speaker. Clause 7 of the bill has been inserted to address this challenge. This clause exempts any employer who has not begun to remit the increased contributions to the NIS before the date of commencement of the National Insurance Validation, Indemnification and Amendment Act 2021 from liability to criminal prosecution. This exemption applies to Section 44 of the Principal Act and the relevant provisions of the National Insurance Collection of Contributions Regulations. Madam Speaker, in closing, while we are not divorced from the impact of the pandemic on employers, workers, and the self-employed, may the members of this honorable House be mindful that the cost of delay in addressing the sustainability of the fund means higher contribution rates over shorter periods instead of a more manageable phased approach. It is, in my humble opinion, it is a very mature, sensible, and prudent decision that we have taken, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I therefore commend the bill to this honourable House for approval.
Opposition Leader.
Madam Speaker, thank you. So this is a bill validating acts that were taken pursuant to a cabinet decision back in December 2019 that had been acted on by the NIF, the National Insurance Fund, but had not actually been enacted in law so as to give them the necessary authority to act. So what this is seeking to do is to enshrine in law those decisions, but also to validate the actions that have taken place since they were actualized, but were actualized without proper legal authority. And this is something that we see coming here from time to time. In fact, there are two such bills before us today. One is dealing with validating things that took place in the mid-80s, mid-1980s. There may be some people in this House who weren't even born then. This one is a bit more recent. And, you know, Minister, we realize that sometimes there are slips between the cup and the lip, and these things do happen. Usually, the opposition pontificates on whichever side is in opposition on the need to be more fastidious and more meticulous and ensure these things are done on a timely basis so we don't need validation legislation, etc. So, but I would just say, yes, we need to do better, but here we are and we need to fix what has happened, so hence this bill. There's one little issue, though, I have, which is a slight concern, and it is this. Employer contributions, whether it be to the NIS or HAT or NHT, are deductible expenses for the employer in their income tax computation. Now, to the extent that employer contributions have been paid since the implementation of the decision, but those employer contributions were not lawful or were not lawfully claimed as deductions because the enactment of the higher rates of contribution had not been implemented at the time. The bill ought to also validate the claim of those deductions during the period, the interregnum between when persons acted on the decision of Cabinet and the fixing of it now. I think that would have been an appropriate thing to do for completeness, and it would have been possible to do it in Clause 2 of the bill, to add a subsection 3 to validate any claim by a taxpayer for deduction in respect of a contribution made during the period, provided that it would have been a properly made deduction had this act been enacted at the time. Words to that effect. So I would have commended that as something to be considered. I just checked with a tax expert, and they did confirm that that would normally be a deductible expense. So the fact that those deductions may have been claimed at a time when the higher rate was not yet enacted could mean that theoretically the deduction was not properly claimed. And I don't think that is intended, because what we're trying to do is to rectify everything, as it were, from day one. Apart from that, Mr. Minister, the broader point, of course, remains, the need to try and secure the future of the NIF. It's a work in progress. The raising of what they call in technical language, the insurable wage ceiling, is an important step towards that. And of course, it is moving to $5 million from April next year, so that you will now pay NIS contributions on up to your $5 million of your income. If you're earning more than that, you won't pay on the excess. And there's a view that you should just pay it on 100% of your income. But I think that is something we will come down the road, eventually be necessary, because obviously what we don't want is for the NIS ever to be become incapable of paying the benefits, which are defined benefits, guaranteed benefits under the scheme. And although these adjustments ensure that that won't happen for quite some time, we want to ensure that it never happens. So, that is something that is going to continue, I think, to rack the brains of policymakers as to how to achieve that and how quickly to achieve it, so it is not unduly onerous on those who have to put up the additional resources to ensure the solvency of the scheme. So, Minister, the bill has our support. There's that one issue which I would commend you to consider, and that apart, we recognize the importance and need for fixing what should have happened but has not happened. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Leader of the Opposition. I'd just like to say that I find what you have said quite logical and worthy of discussion. But I must reveal that since going to this ministry, I've adopted a policy of meeting and collaborating with a number of groups, the Employers Federation, the Confederation of Unions, and the labor union movement. In this instance, we will collaborate along with ourselves with the Ministry of Finance and TAJ, and we will discuss it and see to what extent an appropriate accommodation can be made and recognition for what has transpired as a result of this piece of amendment not being enacted and approved. So thank you very much for your comments, and I commend it to the House for approval. So I ask now, Madam Speaker, for second reading of the bill.
Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the National Insurance Act to increase the contributions paid to the National Insurance Scheme and increase the benefits payable under the National Insurance Scheme, to validate and confirm the payment of certain benefits made in good faith by persons acting on behalf of the National Insurance Fund and the collection of contributions done in good faith, and to indemnify certain persons in respect of those payments and contributions, and for connected matters read a second time.
The House will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole House to consider the bill clause by clause. Minister, how would you like to take the bill, Minister?
I'm not sure how. This is my first shot at this with this new configuration, Madam Speaker. It's in committee.
Yes, we're now at committee stage. We have the option of taking all 9 clauses.
All clauses.
Together,
all
if
clauses.
you have no amendments.
There are 9 clauses, Madam Chair, and
Yeah.
we will put all 9. One to 9.
Madam Chair, since it's going to be put on block like that, I just wanted to reiterate the point I'd made that I would have liked to have seen Clause 2 of the bill adjusted so as to add a subsection 3(2)(3) that would preserve the deductibility of contributions made by employers during the period of time between the implementation of the cabinet decision and this bill coming into effect. I don't know if there's anybody technical here who can assist with doing that, or whether it's something that the Minister of Finance might want to consider before we're attempting to deal with it. But I think it's quite an important point, and I would have liked to have even given the Minister a week to just have that sorted out, and then come back here. If they feel they don't want to change it, they can explain why. And
So are you suggesting that we suspend?
Yes, I am, sir.
I agree with that.
Thank you.
No.
Thank you, Minister.
Good. Thank you very much. Madam Chair.
So at committee stage, decision is that the bill be suspended for consideration of an additional amendment, subsection 3 of clause 2, that is. House will see. So moved.
Thank you.
We will now take the airport economic. Would you like to still ask for a third reading? I don't think so. We're holding there. Minister, no, because at committee stage. Minister, hold on a minute, please.
Madam Speaker, may it please you that the bill be suspended, subject to the comment you earlier made. May I invite you now, Madam Speaker, to ask the Minister of Mining and Transport to make his presentation with regards to the Airports Economic Regulation Exemption Fund, Sanctions International Airport Amendment, Regulation 2021.
Minister Montague.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Airport Economic Regulation Act, the Airport Economic Regulation Expansion Fund, and the Sanctions International Airport Amendment Regulations 2021. Madam Speaker, the resolution has been laid and is on the order paper, and because of the time, we just want to say that in 2003, the Airports Authority of Jamaica and MBJ Airports Limited entered into a concessionary agreement for the financing, operation, and management and development of the Sanctions International Airport for a period of 30 years. In 2002, in preparation for the privatization, the Airports Economic Regulation Act was promulgated, and the Sanctions International Airport Regulations was passed in 2003, pursuant to Section 21 of the Act. The Act, Madam, allows for the imposition and collection of the Airport Improvement Fee, the AIF, and the AIF was to be collected for the first 12 years of the concession to assist in the financing of certain works at Sangster International Airport, reflected in the 2003 concessionary agreement, known as Phase 1A, Phase 1B, and Phase 2 works. Madam Speaker, the concessionary agreement required the MBJ to undertake enhancement, development, and expansion works, which were intended or required to implement the development programs. As it relates to Phase 3, the AAJ, the Airports Authority of Jamaica, and MBJ have definitely identified and agreed on major items of work at the Sangster International Airport, which includes the extension of the existing runway, the installation of runway end safety areas, RISA, at both ends of the runway, and other airside safety and improvement works. In February 2015, the then Minister of Transport, pursuant to his authority under the Act, extended the AIF collection period for an additional 15 years. This was intended to allow for financing of the new works as defined under Phase 3. The implementation of Phase 3 works at the Sangster International, which concern the extension of the runway with the objective of enabling the airport to meet the International Civil Aviation Organization runway and safety area standard. And Madam, this is a section of the, at the end, both ends of the runway, that if the airplane overshoots the runway, it's a safety feature to capture the airplane and save lives. And Jamaica is derelict in our responsibilities internationally over the years, and as a major player in the civil aviation world, it is incumbent upon us as a country to have this done and to save lives. Thank God we have never had any real incident apart from that incident at Norman Manley, where the aircraft slipped off the runway. And even if you had a RISA at the time, that couldn't help it. But we need to be compliant with the civil aviation requirements. Notwithstanding the foregoing cabinet approval, the MBJ is unable to access the AIF for funding of Phase 3 works from the expansion account, as the regulation do not provide for the use of the AIF to fund any other works other than Phase 1 and Phase 2. It is important to note that it was intended that the AIF collection period would have been terminated at the end of Phase 2. But Madam Speaker, the Minister of Transport at the time has the authority under the Act to extend the AIF collection period. However, any amendment to the regulation is subjected to affirmative resolution pursuant to Section 21 of the said Act. And for this reason, the regulation is being tabled before the House for consideration and hopefully approval. Madam Speaker, the cost of the Phase 3 works is approximately US $70 million. We have gone ahead and spent about $5.4 million US out of that. The $70 million US comprise of works, $60 million for the runway extension, the road alignment, etc. And the other $10 million is for the acquisition of land, demolition and clearance, and other safety features. The ministry has an arrangement with the AIF, and through that arrangement, we have been able to access funds to carry on the work that has been done so far. And we have now reached a point, Madam, where we can't go any further unless we have access to these funds, which are there, and we now need to meet the project expenditure from the expansion account. Once the amended regulations are approved, the MBJ will have direct access to the AIF in accordance with the agreed mechanism outlined in the Airport Expansion Fund Agreement. Right now it is being accessed via the Ministry of Transport. Some of the works, Madam, just for the record, expansion of the runway from 2,652 meters to 3,060 meters, installation of the runway safety area, installation of new runway lights, signs and markings, relocation of runway 7 approach lights, and installation of new approach lights for runway 25 using an omnidirectional approach lighting system, relocation and installation of air navigation equipment, realignment of Kent Avenue to establish adequate distances between the extended runway and the north airside perimeter, subject to approval by the Jamaica Civil Aviation Authority, acquisition and transfer of land required for the project, construction of 2 bridges, one across the large north-south drain on the realigned Kent Avenue and the other from Queens Drive across the large east-west drain to access the Jamaica Defence Force Station site and the Jet Center. Acquisition of the Sandals Resort International Boatyard, acquisition of lands for road reservation consequent on the design requirements for the realignment of Kent Avenue, security fencing, pavements, ancillary works to secure and define various installation or property, and the pavement overlay of the taxiways and apron. Madam Speaker, I commend the resolution to the Honourable House for its affirmative resolution and invite my other colleagues, if they so wish, to contribute.
Member Phillips.
Madam Speaker, thank you. Madam Speaker, in essence, we do support the regulations being put forward, resolution being put forward. But, Madam Speaker, you know, too often, and I understand the plight of the minister, but too often we come to the House in really backtracking or going back to things that should have been passed some time ago. And the Minister of Finance is here because just like the Minister of Labour is bringing a bill to the House which should have been brought some time ago, and then we tend to speed them up and carry them through. Because from February 2015 that this has been agreed upon by the Cabinet, and the spending has started by the Airports Authority in getting this project, because the project itself, Phase 3, started some time ago. From February last year, the overlaying of and the expansion of the extension of the runway. But we're just coming to the House now to be able to draw down on the funds. Madam Speaker, as we are spending funds now in improvement not only of the Sangster International Airport and the Norman Manley International Airport, in this budget, 2021-22, in the public bodies, some $1.4 billion is in the capital budget of the Airports Authority to do works on aerodromes. And you know, I find it interesting that 2 years ago we had a similar amount, but we have been talking about these aerodromes, Madam Speaker, through you to the Minister, and the lack of marketing and activities that actually take place at these aerodromes. And let us use the one in the Minister's constituency, the Boscobel Aerodrome, which the former Minister, or International Airport as it is now, the Minister before this one spoke about the great plans of bringing down larger planes, spending quite a few $100 million on the expansion of the airports. And despite we having the pandemic or not, because even before the advent of COVID, we still didn't see an increase of throughput through the aerodromes. We know for a fact that the aerodromes need upgrading, but while we spend these funds on these aerodromes, is that we do the requisite marketing at the same time to ensure that we have the throughputs. Because if you look at the budget of the Airports Authority over the last several years, you would have seen where hundreds of millions of dollars is being spent on an annual basis just to protect and to provide security and to maintain the aerodromes. But then the throughput in revenue is nowhere near where it can quantify for what is being spent. But also, there's a large amount of that $1.4 billion, which is going to be spent on the Vernon Field project. Madam Speaker, I find that how the government is approaching that project is a bit tardy. It's a little bit not in line in how good governance should operate. And why I say that, Madam Speaker, is that this project is being undertaken by the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, but is being asked that the Airports Authority spend the money from its funds to implement that project. But the Ministry of Transport has no say in the project or implementation. It's a little bit, out. Some years ago, about 2 or 3 years ago, about 3 years ago, some $300 million from the Airports Authority was put in an escrow account for the Ministry of Economic Growth to do works on that same Vernon Field project. Bushing was done, some $30-odd million of bushing was done 3 years ago. And now we're going to go back again to do over the same thing again, to build out an airfield for the JDF, to build out other aspects. I think that master plan at least should come to us at the Infrastructure Committee of Parliament or to the Parliament itself before we start spending the funds of the airport authorities on projects like that. I'm not saying that the project is not one that is worthwhile, but I find that when we question the Ministry of Transport on the project, they know nothing of it because it is a project of the Ministry of Economic Growth, but yet still the Airports Authority is under the Ministry of Transport, which is now spending the funds. And we need to have some realignment of the projects if we're going to do them for better just oversight, and not because it's one government, and if it's a giant government, it shouldn't matter who takes the praises for it. But for better oversight, I would suggest that the Ministry of Transport have some oversight over monies which is going to be spent out of an agency under the Ministry of Transport's watch. But back to the regulations, we have no challenges on this side in supporting the regulations put forward by the Minister. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, let me thank the member from Northwest Manchester for his support and his kind remarks. Let me just assure the House and the member that we are moving to revive general aviation in Jamaica. Long ago, Madam Speaker, we had some 52 landing strips, active landing strips in Jamaica. Today we have 8 active landing strips. And this government is moving to expand that because we believe that to get our people moving across, within and across Jamaica, quicker, faster, and more efficiently, it can open up a brand new market. And in that regard, Madam Speaker, even lawyers are benefiting as the opposition leader of business. He has benefited tremendously from that, from the new trust. Madam Speaker, since that we are not only talking about bringing back general aviation, we have spent money at the Negril Aerodrome to overlay the runway and to build a brand new fire station for the hard-working men and women at the Negril Aerodrome. We have, before our projects committee, the overlay of the Lionel Dempsey in St. Elizabeth, and to build a waiting area because we want to open up tourism on the southern coast. Indeed, at the Ken Jones in Port Antonio, we have built out a pilot's lounge, put in new lights, fenced the place, and generally beautifying that facility, so that the kind of tourism that the member from Northwest St. Catherine is used to, that he can fly his private plane straight into Port Antonio. At the Tinsimpen Aerodrome, right here in Kingston, we have built out a pilot's lounge. We're working on a new entrance to align it with the highway. And we are working with the community in and around the Greenwich Farm area to involve them. And the Member of Parliament is involved in those works. The member raised the question, I'm answering it. At the Ian Fleming International, we are building out a brand new police station and fire station, getting ready for the very thing the member asked about, which is the marketing. Let me inform this Honorable House, Madam Speaker, that today we hosted a meeting with the American Aircraft Association, a body that is 600,000 strong. 600,000 members are in that body. And they propose to fly in 10% of that under general aviation into Jamaica this year. Madam Speaker, it makes the member from Northwest St. Catherine and his private jet look smart. So, Madam Speaker, if we can conclude, and as we get into those discussions, I must pay tribute to our ambassador in Washington, Ambassador Audrey Marks, because she has been instrumental in getting those discussions. And we had a joint meeting with Civil Aviation Airports Authority, because we have to do the groundwork so that my colleague in tourism can do the finer touch on the product. So, Madam Speaker, we are working. And Madam Speaker, I am happy for the member from Northwest and thank him for the kind of confidence he's wanting to place in me by asking that the Vernon Field development be sent to the ministry for my oversight. But Madam Speaker, he answered himself. This is one government. One government. And Madam Speaker, this is not about the Vernon Field airstrip. The vision of the member from Central Clarendon, the multimodal configuration, is not about an airport. It is about a brand new city. Vision. It's not about just overlaying the runway. It's about Aerotropolis. It's about a logistics center. It's about training. It's about developing. It's about a pilot school. It's about repairs to aircraft. It is not about just an airport. So this development fits right where it's supposed to logically fit, in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. That is what it is about, economic growth. So it is right there. So, Madam Speaker, the Development Bank of Jamaica, as we speak, is actually packaging that whole development, and we will be going to market soon. And I would like to invite the member from Northwest Manchester, because I heard he just sold his company and he's awash with cash. So I would want to invite him and his colleagues to invest and to underline the confidence of the people of Jamaica in this government to do development and to bring prosperity. So, Madam Speaker, with those remarks, I want to commend to this Honourable House the affirmative resolution of the Airports Improvement Fund, so that the Sangster International Airport can be properly built out and to meet the criteria of the International Civil Aviation Organization. I ask for the bill to be put.
Thanks, Minister. The question is is that the Airport's Economic Regulation Expansion Fund, Sangster International Airport Amendment Regulations 2020-21 resolution be approved. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the three motions that were moved by me, Madam Speaker, in relation to the permission for virtual committee meetings to be held in respect of the cyber crimes and Electricity Act review, as well as the Public Accounts Committee, be approved.
The question is that the standing orders be suspended to enable the Minister to take the motions, the notice of which he gave earlier. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I ask that the motions be approved.
The question is that the motion, notice of which the Minister gave earlier, be approved. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, it is not intended to do any further business for the day. And consequently, Madam Speaker, I invite you to adjourn this Honourable House for a date to be fixed. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Question is that the House be adjourned
Madam
for...
Speaker, just before you move the final request of the honourable members, might I just add that when the House resumes for its next sitting, we will commence the sectoral debate for the appropriations bill for 21-22.
Thank you, House Leader. So the question is that the House be adjourned for a date to be set. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The House stands adjourned.